Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It's September 18th, 2023. And man, it's been a busy few weeks, basically with the 8 passengers, Jody Hildebrandt stories that we've been covering. We've broken all past records on Mormon Stories Podcast with views and downloads and interest on the 8 passengers, Jody Hildebrandt story. I've been in constant contact with several major news media outlets. There are huge, nationally produced video productions, several of them long form, that are going to be coming out around the 8 passengers, Frankie family, Jody Hildebrandt story. It's going to get crazy, and that's made my past few weeks crazy, in addition to all the episodes we've dropped. And then we also recently interviewed David Archuleta's mother, which was awesome. And now this Tim Ballard thing has happened. So things are crazy. But I'm honored and privileged to be here with you today. I want to welcome every one of you who's joining us on the live stream. Today, we're going to be talking about the Mormon Church recently condemning Operation Underground Railroad founder and former president Tim Ballard. We've got so much to cover today. It's been covered a lot, and some really some are very excited about this news. Some are very sad and hurt about it, and it's a tough story. Before we jump in to talking about Tim Ballard again on Mormon Stories Podcast, I want to begin just by doing a little bit of grounding. Because it's so easy in today's society to be polarizing, to attack people, to dehumanize people, and to, frankly, contribute to the polarization and invective and just ill-temperedness that our society is plagued with right now. And I don't want to contribute to that. Some would accuse me of contributing to that. I want to work every day to not contribute to that. So what I wanted to start by doing was to kind of center and ground on my intentions for today. We're going to be talking about allegations against Tim Ballard. I want to say at the start that we believe that people are innocent until proven guilty with evidence and in a court of law. A lot of what we're going to discuss today are probably still best categorized as allegations. So I'll just stipulate, don't believe anything I say today. Go look up the facts and the evidence. And that's the safest way to go. I recommend that in all situations. I want to acknowledge that false allegations happen, and incorrect allegations happen. Evidence should always be our guide. Hopefully we learn this in our experiences with the Mormon Church or with other high demand religions, but let's let evidence be our guide. I also want to just humanize Tim Ballard and say he is a human being. We all deserve grace and humanity. Let's try and be kind and gracious, even if we are evidence-based and critical of behaviors or of facts. I want to acknowledge that we all have flaws. I have flaws. I've made mistakes. I run a nonprofit. It's difficult to run a nonprofit. And so I have flaws and we all have flaws. So let's try and remember that. Let's remember that Tim Ballard has a family that is impacted by this. And let's also acknowledge that systems can't be ignored by focusing purely on individuals. So Tim Ballard works in a context. A lot of his actions have been empowered and enabled, we believe, by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church, and a lot of donors and Mormon Church members and other people outside of Mormonism have empowered and enabled and funded and supported Tim Ballard. So let's remember that Tim didn't act alone, and that there are bigger systems that are at play here. And I'll also just request that people in the comments remember those statements and try to comment accordingly with civility and with humanity. I will thank everyone who's joining us on the live stream or after. If you are joining us on YouTube, I would just ask that you please like this episode. That will help it get shared in the YouTube algorithms. Please subscribe to Mormon Stories podcast channel. We always really appreciate that. And I will add, we always welcome your donations. The best way to donate to Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation is to go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, and become a monthly donor. That enables us to pay our staff, to pay the bills, to make all this good stuff happen. But also, we if you can't become a monthly donor through the website, mormonstories.org, we always welcome super chats here in YouTube. And also, there are ways through stars and other features on Facebook to support us financially. And so we just appreciate everyone who makes that possible. Please like and subscribe on all the platforms, and that would really help us. So to kind of, and we will, I guess we'll just start by thanking our first donor for today, Jesus Loves You, who writes, "Thank you for helping the victims. Thanks for your support. Jesus loves you." Okay, so we've got a lot to cover today. And again, speaking to just the humanity, I'm going to play just a really quick clip out of context, but just to show you the humanity of Tim Ballard. It's an excerpt of a longer video that we're going to play, but this just shows how personal and raw this is, even for Tim Ballard. So I'm going to just roll the clip.
Told me that he appreciates all the things I'm doing and he wants to help me do it. Never in my life, never have I used his name to raise money, to make some business deal. What business deal? I don't have business. It's never happened. But all the press in Utah is claiming that some church representative is saying that I can't get confirmation whether it's true or not true, if it was authorized or not. I don't know. So this is breaking up my family like you can't believe. My children are being harassed right now because everybody believes the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that I've defended for how many years. I've written how many books, made how much money for Deseret book on my hypothesis books. That's books. And nobody can tell me. Guess what? Do you think I called my state president? I said, "Do you know about this?" No idea. I don't believe the church did this. I truly don't. Can you imagine that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would publicly condemn one of its members?
No.
Without talking to the bishop, the stake president? My stake president had no idea.
And I just show that clip to start out with, just to kind of convey the humanity. I found myself in an odd position of feeling a lot of sympathy for Tim Ballard, even though I've been concerned about his behavior over the years and reports of his behavior. I still felt empathy for him, because one thing you have to say about Tim Ballard is he's been loyal to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He's, like he said, he's defended them. He stood up for them. He's done probably countless firesides for them. And he's sold a lot of books through Deseret Book and made the church a lot of money. And I think he's a sincere believer, and I think he loves the church. And so I just can't, I've been personally publicly attacked by the Mormon church. I was criticizing the church and calling the church to account. So even though it was hard to be publicly slandered and criticized by the Mormon church, I don't totally fault the church for doing it, because the church felt like I was harming it. And maybe the church now feels like Tim Ballard is harming the church. But for many years, Tim Ballard was a loyal, faithful, dedicated servant and defender of the church. And so how heartbreaking it must be for Tim Ballard to have the church totally turn on it. And so I believe he's heartbroken. And so in some ways, my condolences to him. Really quickly, there's some really important breaking news just today. Vice News with the excellent reporting of Anna Merlin and Tim Marchman. They just dropped an article today entitled Tim Ballard's Departure from Operation Underground Railroad Followed Sexual Misconduct Investigation. This is breaking news, and I'm not sure everyone knows about that breaking news. I want to let you know that we're not going to be covering Vice's reporting of the sexual allegations in today's episode. That's going to be tomorrow's episode. So I'm excited to announce that tomorrow we will be having Anna Merlin and Tim Marchman on Mormon Stories podcast. It's going to be around noon Mountain Time, and we're going to talk to them about their reporting, about the sexual allegations against Tim Ballard, and other reporting that they're doing. They have at least one more major article that's going to be dropping today, in addition to this one on sexual allegations, and I think there's more to come. So again, please join us tomorrow at noon, if you can, for my interview with Anna Merlin and Tim Marchman of Vice. It's going to be a banger, as they say. Now, I'm going to go ahead and begin and just kind of describe how this story unfolded for me. And I'll begin by just saying, it's really sad in this world that you have to kind of begin with this disclaimer. But in the current polarized environment, if you criticize Tim Ballard, you're accused of being either a pedophile or someone who supports child sex trafficking, or someone who doesn't care about children or doesn't care about abuse. And so I have to state what's kind of hopefully obvious and silly, but I, John DeLynn, and we at Mormon Stories stand 1,000% against abuse of any kind, especially of children. We've recorded numerous episodes over the past 18 years covering sexual abuse, the Boy Scout sexual abuse scandal, sexual abuse of victims. So please don't be mistaken. Please don't equate concerns about Tim Ballard's behavior with being opposed to protecting children or with supporting child abusers. That's kind of ridiculous. I also want to say that I extensively covered Sam Young, the courageous Mormon bishop who fought to protect LDS children. We covered his story in numerous episodes, including his excommunication. And I just want to publicly ask the Mormon Church, why was Bishop Sam Young excommunicated for literally the only sin, the only crime of fighting to protect children in a church that has a really problematic history with protecting children? So I want to just make sure and people know that we've done our best there. And then we've also, in terms of how I got into the story, I did a lengthy series of interviews with Lynn Packer. Lynn Packer is, I believe, the nephew of late Mormon apostle Boyd K. Packer. He was the one who broke the story of Paul H. Dunn, Mormon General Authority, lying in countless General Authority General Conference talks and in Deseret book cassette tapes that were sold, and books lying about his history as a war veteran and as a professional Major League Baseball player. It was Lynn Packer who broke that story. I interviewed Lynn Packer on Mormon Stories podcast. He told his story. He told the Paul H. Dunn story, which I highly recommend. And then in addition, I did an episode with Lynn Packer on Operation Underground Railroad and the Tim Ballard thing many years ago. This was 3 years ago, because Lynn Packer has a YouTube channel, and you can just go to YouTube and type in Lynn Packer, Lynn Packer, and he's got like 30 plus episodes where he's done deep investigative journalism on Lynn Packer. On Tim Ballard and on Operation Underground Railroad. And so much of the reporting that has been done by Vice News, at least borrows from and has used as a source, or at least as a starting point, Lynn Packer's excellent investigations. And so, if you want to refer to that episode, hey, Gerardo, we're happy to have Gerardo Sumana joining us. How's it going, brother? You're muted.
Oops, sorry.
Hey, Gerardo, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
Gerardo, I asked him to join us late, and so he's scrambled to get ready. Gerardo, you were an important co-producer on this episode, so thanks for all your help with it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
Delve into this stuff.
Yeah, it's great to have you as always.
Thank you.
Check out our coverage of Tim Ballard on that episode with Lynn Packer. Check out Lynn Packer's excellent YouTube channel. And then I also want to say that just recently we covered the Sound of Freedom movie and Tim Ballard and Underground Railroad and the concerns we had with that. We had Anna Merlin and Tim Marchman on to cover that. And then, of course, we did a special episode with our own Julia to talk about Joseph Smith and human trafficking, because so many people are concerned about child sex trafficking. So many Mormons are concerned about child sex trafficking, partly motivated by all the publicity that Tim Ballard and Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes and others have given to the problem. We just felt like it was really important for those who care about child sex trafficking to understand Joseph Smith's history, the Nauvoo Expositor, the way that polygamy was handled in Nauvoo and in Utah, and decide for yourself whether you believe that the Mormon Church was founded on some sex trafficking kind of behaviors. I won't try and adjudicate that now, but I do want to refer people to those episodes. So I do want to just hit very directly this question: what is wrong with Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad? I want to just, the best way to summarize it wouldn't be me. It might be some recent legal initiatives that are now very much public knowledge. Fox News, Fox 13 in Salt Lake City broke the story back in 2020 that the anti-human trafficking group Operation Underground Railroad is under criminal investigation by a Utah prosecutor. I believe that was up in the Ogden area. And that investigation, that criminal investigation, led to a federal criminal investigation. And just recently, Fox 13 released another article that says Operation Underground Railroad spent years downplaying criminal investigation. And again, as I understand it, the FBI was involved in that investigation, which magically was terminated recently. We're going to talk about that in a bit and ask whether or not it's possible that someone in the position, such as Sean Reyes as Utah Attorney General, could have had some involvement in getting that investigation shut down, because we know that Attorney General Sean Reyes is a super close ally and supporter and partner with Tim Ballard. But just to summarize the concerns that many have had with Tim Ballard, and I would add myself to this concern. I'll start with what's not our concern. The concern is not that Tim Ballard is a Republican. I will say that I, John DeLynn, am currently a registered Republican in the state of Utah. I do that for a number of reasons, but it's not because I support all planks of the Republican Party. I'm definitely a social progressive, but I do feel like fiscal conservatism is important. I'm anti-war, and depending on where you are in the party, you can come down on different sides. But this is not a partisan thing. So many people see me post stuff about Tim Ballard and they say, John, why are you making this political? And I'm trying to make it really clear. This is not political. The concerns are, number one, allegations of fraud, that Tim Ballard has secretly used psychics and fraudulent intelligence for his interventions and for his jumps, that he creates demand for these alleged jump team services so that he'll get sort of these CrossFitters, take them all down to Central America and, pose as Americans that are seeking, to exploit and traffic young children for sexual means, which then by paying locals to find the children or the traffickers. They're financing and incentivizing locals to create a supply of people being trafficked. And we've talked about that in other episodes. There's been concerns that these commando paramilitary jumps or raids are often staged, that they're contrived and not genuine in many instances. There's been serious concern about Tim Ballard and O.U.R. taking credit for the work of other people, of grossly overstating and over-exaggerating his involvement in these jumps and in these interventions, including people questioning how he's characterized what he did for both the CIA, I believe, and the Department of Homeland Services. There are strong associations between Tim Ballard and his associates and various conspiracy theories, including the QAnon crowd. There seems to be an unhealthy reliance on psychics and strange neo-fundamentalist or prepper Mormon teachings. If any of you are concerned about Denver Snuffer, Julie Rowe, Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, just even Jody Hildebrandt and the 8 Passengers, there's so much convergence in neo-fundamentalist Mormonism, where you believe that you can talk to Jesus personally, where you believe that you can channel, or psychics can channel communications with Nephi and Moroni and Joseph Smith, and that you believe that you can, that there are past lives, and that there are multiple mortal probations, and end times eschatology and millennialism, that Jesus is coming any moment, and that we've got to prepare for the final days, that Jesus is coming. This is all Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, millennialist prepper ideology that Tim Ballard is also swimming in. And so that's concerning to many, because so often that stuff ends violently, or in fraud or in problems. I personally have had at least one former board member of O.U.R. and several past employees come to me directly and report directly to me deeply problematic behavior of Tim Ballard and of O.U.R., including the bullets on this slide. So I'm not speaking second and third hand. I'm talking to people. I've talked personally with several people who are firsthand witnesses to the problems that I list on this slide. Also, there are concerns about these jumps and these interventions not providing adequate aftercare for the victims that he claimed to save, putting them right back into the system. I believe that Elizabeth Smart and Ed Smart used to be involved with Tim Ballard, and then they mysteriously cut off all associations with him. And my understanding is part of their concerns were around just the complete lack of any thought for aftercare of the victims. And that's just one example. And then perhaps some of the most important, concerns that many people have are that Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad, as potentially or allegedly a semi-fraudulent organization, or substantively, possibly fraudulent organization, are taking attention and money and resources away from legitimate nonprofits that actually are saving children and protecting and healing and helping in the healing of victims. That's a concern that many people have. And then secondly, that if Tim Ballard cares about the abuse of children, and wants to make a difference there, and this is true of Sean Reyes and others, perhaps the most significant way that they could make a difference isn't by going to Uruguay or Haiti or the Dominican Republic. We all know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, in 2023 has a massive history of child abuse, of covering up for sexual predators, and of abuse of Boy Scouts. That's one of the main reasons the Mormon Church scuttled its long-standing relationship with the Boy Scouts of America. The Associated Press has reported a serious, significant cover-up problem where Mormon bishops are discouraged from reporting sexual abuse to police authorities. And and seeking to silence victims and family members of victims. And we've covered that on numerous episodes on Mormon Stories podcast. And so many people are asking Tim Ballard, Sean Reyes, if you want to solve the problem of child abuse, start with the Mormon church, start in your own backyard, start in Utah, instead of sort of posing as a white savior to go over there, make the big difference in every ward and in every stake all across Utah, Arizona, Idaho, California, etc. That would certainly be a better use of your time and of money. And then finally, I'll just add one final concern, is that Tim Ballard is often associated with rhetoric that is harmful to marginalized groups, like racial minorities, like immigrants, and even some say associations with those who are homophobic or transphobic. And of course, on Mormon Stories that our heart is with any marginalized community. Now, I'm going to pause really quickly, and I'm going to ask Gerardo to jump in. Is there anything you want to add to these disclaimers or to any introduction that I've given so far, Gerardo?
Yeah, no, not really. I think I agree with all those points. I will say that, I mean, you mentioned Tim Ballard's associations with anti-LGBT groups. I would say not just associations, but he's made several homophobic and transphobic remarks on public podcasts and videos, and some of his closest friends, like the producer of the movie Sound of Freedom, have been in big controversies because of making homophobic remarks, associating homosexual people or gay people or the LGBT community with pedophiles and traffickers. So yeah, it's pretty problematic in my opinion as someone that is part of that community.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Gerardo. And I'll just also add that, wherever you stand on immigration in the United States, whether you tend to lean more towards supporting immigrants or whether you lean more towards enforcement of the borders and limiting immigration, what I hope all of us can feel and have is empathy for people who often are living in unacceptable, unlivable circumstances and or are fleeing political or violent situations where they're trying to just get a job or flee violent or unsafe conditions. And I've been very concerned with Tim Ballard's rhetoric around basically painting all immigrants as child molesters and as child traffickers. And I'm not going to say he always does that, but I'm uncomfortable sometimes with the way that he sort of paints immigrants with a broad brush as being child sex traffickers. I'm just going to add that as well. Now, really quickly, this little clip that I'm about to show that was played last week on Fox 13 News helps to illustrate some of this, the problems that we've been trying to outline. And it just kind of shows where Tim Ballard's head and emotions are at right now. So let me just play this clip from Fox 13 News.
In 2020, prosecutor Troy Rawlings posted a series of messages on his personal Instagram account. Quote, "Please beware of any individual entity or organization who solicits your money and may be claiming credit for work to protect children that is actually done by our task force."
So really quickly, Gerardo, you may want to jump in here. But, just right off the bat, that's expressing one main concern, that Tim Ballard was going around taking credit for the work of other nonprofits, other law enforcement agencies. And it's always been a nuanced conversation because clearly Tim Ballard and O.U.R. has helped some number of children, some number of, has helped convict some number of abusers. It may be that that's a grossly overinflated number, but at the same time, it's unethical to take credit for things that you're not responsible for, especially if you're fundraising off of over-exaggerating your involvement. And I think that's what got that's what kicked off this investigation that led to many other things. Do you want to add anything to that, Gerardo? You're muted again.
Sorry.
That's
No,
okay.
other than it's obviously unethical to be doing that sort of practice. But
yeah. All right, let's go ahead and keep going with the video.
The messages did not name O.U.R. directly.
Has O.U.R. ever over-exaggerated what it's accomplished?
No. No, I mean, it's, you know, it's funny when we give our
And I just want to stop right there. Like right there, that is an outrageous, that is just a grossly outrageous accusation. If you just look at the work of Lynn Packer, his YouTube videos, he's exhaustively shown how Tim Ballard is over-exaggerated or just completely misrepresented his efforts. And then Vice News, the many articles that Vice News has published. And it's not just Vice News. You could just Google Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad. Very respectable magazines and newspapers have covered the constant misrepresentations of Tim Ballard and O.U.R. for their efforts over the years. Is that your understanding as well, Gerardo?
well, yeah. And you don't even, I mean, if you are someone who doesn't trust the media or think that media outlets are corrupt or protecting pedophiles, I mean, you don't even have to go that far as reading their articles. Just watch the Sound of Freedom movie, watch what Tim Ballard says about the movie, which he pretty explicitly says on videos and public podcasts that this is basically 99% reality. And then just look at the public records about what this actual pedophile was. Like, he was not, like we've talked about in other podcasts, the guy who's represented in the movie, he was not a sex trafficker. He was a pedophile that was known to the family, that the family agreed for him to take the kid, you know, all this stuff that he obviously has been I mean, he made a movie out of this exaggerated claims that are completely false, and you don't even have to go to the media to, you know, disprove those claims. Just go look to the public records of the court cases and you'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, he did something funny with Sound of Freedom where he said, you know, this is a dramatic representation. But then he totally set himself up as the hero of the movie and showed himself doing all these heroic things, which builds his reputation as a hero. And then he goes after in the press tours and says, basically, in effect, you know, everything in the movie is accurate. And it's disingenuous, and that's a problem. All right, let's go ahead and keep playing this clip.
our numbers, we're actually pretty conservative.
Is O.U.R. still under investigation?
You know, I focus on rescuing kids, and I have a team that would answer those questions. Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure we're going to find out that the answer to that is yes. And I think he could have given a very simple answer, which is yes. Do you agree, Gerardo?
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. So it's clear that something's still going on. Let's continue.
Unbelievable. I'm out of here. You guys started a little easy.
Within minutes after that question, he got angry and walked out of the interview. For years, his team told people there was no criminal investigation, which is not true. The nonprofit's chief legal officer says she has no explanation.
What was the basis of the investigation?
You'd have to ask the Davis County Attorney's Office.
Are you able to explain why O.U.R. was telling people that there was not an investigation when in fact there was?
I don't have any information on that.
Do you feel that this is now fully behind you?
I certainly hope so. I mean, we have to take the Davis County Attorney at his word.
Usually, completed investigations are a matter of public record, but when we asked for a copy, prosecutors would not give up the case file. We also found Operation Underground Railroad wrote a letter asking for those records to remain private, in part because of federal grand jury material. We believe at least some of these records should be public. We're in the process of filing appeals so that you know what this case is really about, especially now that a member of the Quorum of the 12 is citing betrayal. Reporting in studio, Adam Herbets, Fox 13 News, Utah.
So a huge shout out to Adam Herbets and Fox 13 News. They're doing great reporting. And so it's very clear that this isn't just John DeLynn being political. This isn't just a sour grapes. There are likely ongoing major federal investigations. And I think those who are kind of in the know feel like that's one of the reasons why so many people are bailing ship from Tim Ballard. I actually got a text just recently. It says, been texting. This is from someone very closely connected with the political scene in Utah. They wrote, been texting with a very prominent political strategist and fundraiser for Utah Republicans, a fundraiser for people like the Huntsmans and Sean Reyes. And this person went on to say, they are all running for cover from Tim Ballard. And it seems like it's not just the sexual allegations. It's not just the weirdness with Nephi and psychics, but it's possibly because a federal indictment or a grand jury has been convened and an investigation is ongoing. So hopefully we've made that case. Now let's go ahead and Gerardo, you can jump in at any point. Just let me know. So how did this all flare up again? So last week I received the following text from I'll just say someone whose name you would recognize and someone who could not be more closely connected with the political scene in Utah. I'll just say that. And they wrote me, I've been hearing through different people that Tim Ballard is running for Mitt Romney's seat. But apparently he also called, and I'm hiding the person's name this is a national media figure. Apparently Tim Ballard called this national media figure the other night around 1 a.m., telling her that he saw Jesus Christ and the second coming is near. He also told her he is running because it is the end of days. This guy gives me fundamentalist Daybell vibes. I hope he's exposed enough with him running for office that he doesn't get the support to win a Senate seat. And then I responded, I so hope he runs but doesn't win. And then this person, she responded, he said Christ told him to announce his candidacy on October 10th. So if this source is correct, and if Jesus Christ commanded Tim Ballard to announce his Senate candidacy on October 10th, we should see that announcement then, unless the information is not correct, or Tim Ballard decides to disobey Jesus, or I guess there's always a possibility that Jesus could change his mind and have him do it on another day because of extenuating circumstances. Regardless, when I receive a text like that from a super credible source, I'm concerned. So I was scared. And then I go to share this information publicly because this source wanted me to share it publicly. And immediately as I'm literally drafting the text on Instagram, I see the news that Mitt Romney announced he's going to retire and that he's calling for a new generation beyond Biden and Trump. And at that point, I was really scared because it's one thing for Tim Ballard to run against a successful, well-known incumbent who was, the Republican nominee for president just a while ago. It's a totally different thing for Tim Ballard to run not against an incumbent, against a bunch of no-names. And of course, one major named person that potentially could challenge Tim Ballard for a Utah U.S. Senate seat would be the Attorney General Sean Reyes. But then I find out on Twitter by someone named Matt Holt, again on September 13th, he writes, update, Attorney General Sean Reyes tells the Messenger that he is not running for Senate and will run for re-election as Attorney General. He said he will be endorsing someone else, quote, who will be making an announcement in the days to come. Story will be updated. And of course, in my mind, I'm terrified thinking that that's likely going to be Tim Ballard because of how Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes have operated hand in hand very publicly. I've heard reports of like fundraisers where helicopters will come down and like Tim Ballard or Sean Reyes or whoever will like rappel out of the elevator down, out of the helicopter, down into the crowd where the fundraisers are. Like, I don't know the details, but like Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes operating together, speaking together, fundraising together. And I believe Sean Reyes, along with Tim Robbins, actually participated in at least one major O.U.R. jump, which I think there's a movie in the works about to showcase. Anyway, I was then extra disturbed to read a statement attributed to Sean Reyes that says, from Sean Reyes, I wish Senator Romney and his family the best in retirement. Over the last several years, I have been asked by many in Utah, Washington, D.C., and across the country to run for his seat, whether or not he was running for re-election. I believe I am in a great position to win that seat and could serve well as a senator. So what a setup. Sean Reyes says, I could easily do it. No problem. I'm set to do it. But he doesn't. He says, after a long time consulting with my family, praying, and I assume he's praying to the same people that Tim Ballard is praying to, and looking at where I can make the most difference and serve most effectively, I've decided it is not in DC, but here at home. So I am announcing my run for re-election as Attorney General in the great state of Utah. And then he says that opens up an opportunity for a dear friend of mine who is a great conservative, patriot, and warrior to run and serve as the next senator from Utah. This person will be making an announcement in the days to come, and I will be standing alongside this servant leader on a journey to the United States Senate. So at that point, I was really, really, really scared. And that's what happened last week. Gerardo, let me take a minute and bring you in. Anything you want to add here?
No, other than I share with you the fear.
Yeah. let me just
I'll say that I like those slides that say that you were scared and really scared.
Yeah, I was. And for the reasons that I mentioned previously, it's not because I hate Republicans. I am a registered Republican. It's not because I hate Mormons. I love the Mormon people. I want the best for the Mormon church. All I do is to try and help the Mormon church be healthier and to help Mormons have a better experience and help those who leave. It's not out of hate. It's out of a deep love for our country, a deep love for the state of Utah, and a desire for good things to happen.
Yeah.
Really quickly, I'm just going to thank Carol Emmett for her super chat donation. She says, hello, Gerardo. A couple other people send messages. Jason Lynn says, thank you for the excellent podcast. Peter Callister writes, Sam Young, protect every child, Mormon stories. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jenny. She writes a new example of the church's secret combinations. I don't know if I would put it that way, trying to not be polarizing, but I certainly validate your feelings. Jenny Fierce Quaker writes, thank you, John, and all of you in your organization, especially Margie. We absolutely love Margie. And I also want to say, Catherine writes, thanks for all you do to present a fair and thorough report on things in the space, John and team. So thanks to all the people who are supporting us. And again, we depend on your donations at mormonstories.org if you're willing. Now, as I mentioned before, last week I was really, really scared. And then I'll say until my friends, Tim Marchmont and Anna Merlin, published a new article that I was not expecting that was titled Mormon Church Denounces Tim Ballard's Morally Unacceptable Activities. And I was really, really shocked about that. I was not expecting that article. And let me just play how the Utah local TV coverage of the article played out on ABC4 News.
From Utah's first TV station, ABC4 News celebrates 75 years.
Welcome to ABC4 News at 10. I'm Sarah Murphy.
And I'm Emily Flores. We thank you for joining us. Our top story tonight, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints releasing a statement denying their association with the former CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, Tim Ballard.
Now, this comes after Ballard's claims that the church leader and Russell Ballard were close friends, them together, and they counseled with each other regarding Operation Underground Railroad missions. Now, Operation Underground Railroad, or O.U.R, is a nonprofit that says they rescue victims of child trafficking. Now, the church denied Ballard's claims in a statement today, saying they never endorsed, supported, or represented Tim Ballard or any projects associated with him. They also say Tim Ballard betrayed M. Russell Ballard's friendship and used his name for his own financial and personal interests. Now, Tim Ballard has not commented. He worked as the CEO of Operation Underground Railroad until earlier this year.
So, that's the way that one news program reported the story. It was definitely shocking to see, shocking to hear. And so what I wanted to do next was to just read, we're going to cover a lot of the points of the article tomorrow with Anna and Tim. But what I wanted to focus on today is the statement by the church that was first reported in the Vice News article. And so I'm going to go ahead and just pull that up now, and I'm going to read it to you, and then we're going to kind of dissect some parts of it that we think are really important. But from the Vice article, it reads, in response to a detailed request for comment on these matters, a spokesperson for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this is an unnamed spokesperson at the time, sent a statement which reads in full, President Ballard and Tim Ballard, no relation, established a friendship a number of years ago. That friendship was built on a shared interest in looking after God's children wherever they are and without regard to their circumstance. However, that relationship is in the past. For many months, President Ballard has had no contact with the founder of Operation Underground Railroad. The nature of that relationship was always in support of vulnerable children being abused, trafficked, and otherwise neglected. Once it became clear Tim Ballard had betrayed their friendship through the unauthorized use of President Ballard's name for Tim Ballard's personal advantage and activity regarded as morally unacceptable, President Ballard withdrew his association. And again, this was only months ago. President Ballard never authorized President Ballard never authorized his own name or the name of the church to be used for Tim's personal or financial interests. In addition, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints never endorsed, supported, or represented O.U.R, Tim Ballard, or any projects associated with them. President Ballard loves children all over the world. It has been his mission and life's work to look after them, care for them, and point them to their Savior. So to summarize the components of the church's statement, I'll just list a couple things, and Gerardo, I want you to jump in if you have any initial comments, because we are going to be digging in deep. Point one was that I think is important, and it was actually Radio Free Mormon that called this to my attention. It starts out by saying, in response to a detailed request by Vice News. And the reason why I am calling that out, thanks to RFM, the great Radio Free Mormon, is that it appears as though Vice News sent the Mormon Church a detailed preview of the articles that it was going to be publishing about. So at a minimum, I'm guessing it's going to be these allegations of like using a psychic and channeling Nephi through a psychic to tell them where to go on their jumps, these sexual allegations that were coming down the pike, and these, a potential ongoing investigation and or federal grand jury. And I would say these issues about Elder Ballard's business associations and endorsement of Tim Ballard. I'm guessing that it was in response to seeing that the veritable feces was about to hit the fan, that the Mormon church felt like it needed to do what it usually doesn't do. It usually just tells the news media, no comment, no comment. We're not available for comment. Usually they don't even return calls of reporters for a story like this. They did the unusual act of actually responding with a statement. I believe, and RFM believes, because Vice News let them know what was coming. Gerardo, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much on that statement that we're probably gonna just be dissecting, but yeah, just very unusual for the church to be condemning a specific individual on a statement like this, right? And calling them out by name, and you know, I mean, and the context also is pretty awful when you say that this person that they're calling out by name betrayed the confidence of an apostle. I mean, for members of the church, that's like, that's like betraying Jesus in some way. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, you make a good point, Gerardo, because we covenant as Mormons, to support the Lord's anointed, right? To obey and never speak ill of the Lord's anointed, and to charge a member with disloyalty, disobedience, betrayal of an apostle. It's, I often say authority is the most sacred thing in Mormonism, like obedience to priesthood authority is certainly in 2023 the most sacred thing in all of Mormonism. And they're basically accusing Tim Ballard of violating that authority.
Yeah.
Super serious. Okay. So a couple other points is again that this statement was unsigned. There was no name attached to it. Weirdly, it was shared with Vice News, and it was not put on LDS Newsroom. Many people are just super curious. Why in the world, of all the different media outlets, would the church start by sharing it with Vice News? Many conservative believing Mormons view Vice News as evil, as bad, as shoddy journalism. And so that was a really weird decision that the church made. It acknowledged that Tim Ballard and Russell Ballard were very close friends, and that the relationship ended just a few months ago. And Gerardo, I bold that because I think that's significant.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like 6 months or 12 months or several years ago, just a few months ago. Do you find that significant?
Yeah. Yeah, because what does that mean? A few a few months before, shy of her 15th birthday, that kind of language, obviously they're being dismissive and not wanting to say for a reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, what we should do now, I think, is go to Tim Ballard's response. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it and I'm going to pause it. And I want us to comment on that response, Gerardo, if that's okay.
Yep.
And I'm going to acknowledge that a lot of our viewers and listeners have seen this. I think of Mormon Stories as sort of the public record for what's going on in Mormonism. So I play these things and respond to them to provide an insight and analysis, but also just for the matter of the public record. I will warn people that the audio isn't great on this recording. And so we'll just ask you to turn up your stereos if you need to. We apologize for the poor audio. But let's go ahead and play this and we'll respond to it. By the way, my understanding, Gerardo, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Tim Ballard is literally right now back east in sort of colonial America, in New England, leading a tour where people paid something like $5,000 a person to be taken around to various historical sites in America to learn about the founding of America based on Tim Ballard's books and on his perceptions and understanding about America. So this is in front of some monument somewhere in New England, surrounded by these people that have paid up to $5,000 to hear him talk. Like, what a horrible news story to break while
Yeah.
you're in the middle of a week, I don't know, a week-long retreat with a bunch of people who paid a ton of money who see you as an authority. I feel a little bit sorry for him. You?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, keep in mind that probably most or all of these people that are on this tour are Mormon.
Yeah.
And they've come because his understanding of the founding of the United States, he relates it to Mormonism and how the God of Mormonism was involved in it, and how they were raising their right hands and doing this stuff, the rituals from the temple, even before the restoration happened, and all this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. Doesn't he intimate in one of his books that like Abraham Lincoln decided to fight slavery because he was reading the Book of Mormon? I'm probably mischaracterizing it, but like he's published several books about the founding of America, seeming to suggest that the Book of Mormon or Joseph Smith or Mormonism were influential with the American founding.
Yeah, 100%.
And I one of my favorite TikTok videos of the year is when Ben Park, reputable historian Ben Clark, Mormon historian Ben Clark, basically denounced Tim Ballard. Well, Ben Park denounced Tim Ballard, not for any of the stuff we've talked about, but just for being a shoddy, uncredible historian.
Yep.
So anyway, our viewers and listeners are saying that they're in Boston for this event. And if that's true, that's good to know. Okay, let's keep going.
Leo, how close am I to President M. Russell Ballard? I didn't stage this. How do you know this?
I know this because a few years ago, Tim brought President Ballard here. I gave him this tour. I gave him a tour of a walking tour at 90 years old. I offered him a wheelchair. He said to me, "You take the wheelchair. I'm walking." One of the most calming people I've ever met.
Thank you for filming. You should all film whatever you can right now.
Okay, so a couple things, Gerardo, that I want to call out. One is that by this point, the church has already made the statement that Ballard doesn't want his name associated with that Elder Ballard, apostle, acting president of the Mormon Church Quorum of the 12 Apostles, M. Russell Ballard, does not want his name associated with Tim Ballard. And yet here he is, not just asserting that he's closely associated, but like appealing to that cosplay dude dressed up as some sort of town crier, colonial town crier, appealing to him to back up his contradiction that he is dear friends and close associates with M. Russell Ballard. Don't you think that's an interesting thing to do if you're a covenanted, faithful, believing Mormon?
Yeah.
Or not?
Well, I think what this video is going to show is that at this point, Tim is not believing the Vice News report, and he's not believing that that's what's actually happened. You can tell that he's kind of confused. I mean, I think if you go to the video, some of the top comments are like, if he's like a grandfather figure to you, why don't you just give him a call and ask him what's going on? I mean, that's the obvious thing to do, because he'll say that he's confused and doesn't know what's going on. But so I believe, and this is my personal opinion, that at this point, it's hard. He can't communicate with the apostle, and he doesn't understand why, and he's really not believing the Vice article. But yeah, kind of interesting. And I hadn't really listened to what the guy from the tour said, but now that I kind of understood what he was saying, that's really interesting. That the apostle was there when he was 90 years old, which means like around 4 years ago, because he's 94 right now, or 92. I could be wrong, but so not too long ago he was there. He took that same tour. He didn't want to get a wheelchair, but yeah, it's really interesting that this association between these ideas that Tim Ballard believes and talks about, with no credentials as a historian at all. And here's an apostle, going on these tours. Just really interesting.
And I just want to reiterate, if I knew an apostle didn't want me mentioning his name in public or associating me with the apostle, and I was a faithful, believing Latter-day Saint, I would I would kind of just stop trying to make that assertion. So, or at least I would wait until I could talk to the guy and figure out what was going on before I just doubled down. But clearly he's going to double down here. All right, let's go back to the clip. So let me. Okay.
Thank you for filming. You should all film whatever you can right now.
Okay, that next thing is really interesting. He's telling people.
It's like a grandfather to me.
So he's telling people, he's just like saying, everyone film this and everyone share it. Again, that's pretty defiant in my view. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, some say that they consider Tim Ballard to have a little bit of a narcissistic personality. I mean, and that's kind of like what someone with these traits would do, would double down and not let their name be disparaged, even if it comes at the cost of offending an apostle or the church even more,
Yeah. He clearly doesn't understand where the power lies in this organization. And he's clearly overestimated his own power and influence, which is understandable, because we'll show later that the church put him forward as one of the most important people in the history of the church. All right, let's go ahead and continue.
He came to me in, I don't know, 2012, 2011.
And I want to just mention one thing that we missed there is he said Elder Ballard was like a grandfather to me. So it's not just like he's my prophet. It's not just we're friends. He said grandfather. Is that right, Gerardo? Yeah.
And let me just say that I think so I know a person, a good friend of mine, who had a close relationship with Elder Ballard, and would use that same exact phrase as he would see Elder Ballard as a grandfather figure. And now Elder Ballard has completely cut communications with this person. So, I mean, to me, it doesn't come as a surprise that Elder Ballard would do this, because he's done it to a friend of mine as well. So, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, Elder Ballard appears to have a pattern of taking on the role as a supportive grandfather figure in celebrities, sort of, we'll just say celebrities kind of lives. But if those celebrities ever dare part from a public position that the church doesn't like, Elder Ballard has no use for you, and he cuts you off and won't even return your phone calls at that point. Won't even meet with you, return your phone calls. So I don't know many grandpas that would act that way, right?
Yeah.
Cut off all communication if you simply act in a way that doesn't benefit them. That's not very grandfatherly. So that's a disturbing pattern.
And he told me that he appreciates all the things I'm doing and he wants to help me do it. Never in my life, never have I used his name to raise money, to make some business deal. What business deal? I don't have business.
Really quickly, we are going to cover that outrageous allegation that he has no business is just outrageously untrue. We're going to cover that. But also, it is completely impossible that Tim Ballard has never used M. Russell Ballard's name in any of his fundraising or any of his interactions with donors. That's just, we don't want to belabor the point, but that's outrageous and clearly false.
Also notice, John, that he says that the apostle came to him around 2012, 2011. I mean, and they've kept that relationship for a long time. And it's just a few months ago when Ballard came a relationship with. So it has to be that the apostle knew, and as we're going to show, he was part of the fundraisings. And I mean, the apostle obviously knew that Tim Ballard was using his name. And I'll just say this with respect to what I just said about a friend who had a similar experience. It seems like this pattern of Elder Ballard cutting relationships, even with people that would consider him a grandfather figure, the pattern always comes when the church is at stake, when the church's name it's about to be could be something could be said that would be damaging to the church, or something could come out that would damage the church's reputation, and that's when Elder Ballard comes and cuts. I mean, his loyalty to the church is obviously higher than any relationship that he has.
Yeah, it's a relationship of expediency. It's a relationship of convenience, and it's a relationship of conditional love. And I'll say, Elder Jeffrey R. Holland was willing to meet with me when he felt like I was friendly to the church. But as soon as I started having real concerns about the harm that the church was doing specifically to the LGBTQ community, and there were other reasons, to be fair, Elder Holland did the same thing to me and completely cut me off from any future communications. I can't say I fault them, because they're always trying to manage their reputations. They can't afford in the social media age to be demeaned and degraded. So I get it. I understand why they have to do that, but it is sad to be on the receiving end of that. So my heart goes out to Tim Ballard here.
Never happened. But all the press in Utah is claiming that some church representative is saying that I can't get confirmation whether it's true or not true, if it was authorized or not. I don't know. So this is breaking up my family like you can't believe. My children are being harassed right now because everybody believes that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that I've defended for how many years? I've written how many books? Made how much money for Deseret book on my hypothesis books? And nobody can tell me. Guess what? Do you think I called my state president? I said, "Do you know about this?" No idea. Really quickly, I just want to say that part about his wife and kids being impacted by this, as someone who's a small public figure, nothing in the realm of Tim Ballard, just in the small role that I have as a public figure, it's been excruciatingly hard at times on my wife Margie, on my kids. My name's been smeared in public. My kids and wife have all experienced, instances of stress or aggression, or just weird, inappropriate, awkward kind of conversations as a result of being a public figure. And I want to just say, my heart goes out to Tim, who I believe cares about his family and his wife and kids, and my heart goes out to Tim's wife and kids and his family and friends, because he is getting raked over the coals. He is getting shamed and demeaned publicly. And what's weird is it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that's supposedly led by Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, the author of forgiveness, that's leading the charge of shaming and demeaning Tim Ballard. And historically, the Mormon Church has a policy of never discussing publicly disciplinary matters, with the exception of like my excommunication, where the church actually did release a condemning statement about me. So many people get excommunicated every week within Mormonism, and you never hear about it because the church has the policy of not smearing or talking about disciplinary actions with members. And by the way, Gerardo, did you ever hear a condemnation of Lori Vallow? Did you ever hear a condemnation of Chad Daybell? There are so many awful, egregious murderers and rapists. Have you ever heard the Mormon Church denounce a pedophile or a rapist or a murderer? And the Mormon Church is full. Well, let's just say the Mormon Church has a history of harboring thousands of rapists, pedophiles, child abusers, spouse abusers. Never once has the Mormon Church ever condemned any of those people that I'm aware of by name.
Yeah.
And yet it's choosing to condemn Tim Ballard.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't that say a lot?
Well, of course. And just, I mean, people are putting it in the comments. Jody Hildebrand, who the church paid thousands of dollars, through in tithing money, and recommended people to her to go to therapy with her when, I mean, it's come to light that her practices are completely unethical. But yeah, it's again, like I think I said it from the beginning, the church doing this is pretty, I mean, it's kind of crazy that they've done this.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
And again, Sam Young's excommunicated for protecting children. Natasha Helfer is excommunicated for practicing ethical mental health, principles. It's just weird. And the Bible says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I think you could also say, where your condemnations are, there will your heart be also. This is just another example of what's most sacred to the Mormon Church. It's not its loyal members. It's not its faithful members. It's not the privacy and the safety and the happiness of its members. It's in its authority and in its public relations image. And that's why it's willing to publicly smear and denounce Tim Ballard against its own policies, because it's afraid that Tim Ballard's behaviors are going to besmirch the Mormon Church's reputation. It's kind of hypocritical. And I feel sorry for Tim and his family that it's being handled this way. All right, let's continue.
I don't believe the church did this. I truly don't. Can you imagine that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would publicly condemn one of its members?
No.
Without talking to the bishop, the stake president? My stake president had no idea.
No.
Is that possible? I have never used Elder Ballard's name, ever. I've never traded on his name.
Really quickly, it is outrageous. The church, if it's anything, it's a priesthood hierarchy. It's a patriarchy. It's a hierarchy. And anytime church discipline is involved, your stake president should be notified, and then your bishop should be notified, and you should be sat down in private and told what the concerns are. And then a disciplinary council is held to evaluate whether or not you're guilty. And that's the way of things. And the fact that the church did this out of expediency in reaction to an article it feared would be published without following its own practices of going through the channels of Tim Ballard's ecclesiastical leaders, it is unheard of. It is outrageous, and it's inhumane and inexplicable. And I don't mean to just be too ranty, but for those who have never been Mormon, if I'm excited, it's because of how extraordinary and outrageous this is, and in violation of the Mormon Church's own policies and guidelines.
I just wanted to jump in.
Gerardo,
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Jump in. Please jump in when you want to say something.
So I just wanted to say that, I agree with you, John, there, that this should have followed the Mormon due process for disciplinary if there was anything wrong. I mean, the reality is that there's no sin that the Handbook of Instructions, which is the manual or the book that the bishops follow to discipline members when they have committed sin. I mean, there's nothing there that talks about betraying the trust of an apostle, right? So there's a problem there, and then there's
but Gerardo, it could be that the church was given a heads up about allegations of sexual impropriety, and the fact that it used the language moral in the newsletter. In the church, moral is often synonymous with sexual. And so the fact that he was alleged to have violated some sort of, the fact that he was alleged to have engaged in immoral behavior, that suggests that they were tipped off that there were some sexual allegations coming. Not to mention it is breaking the law is potentially punishable in a Mormon church disciplinary council. So breaking the law and fraud would also potentially qualify, although the church tends to be very lenient on white collar crime. Do you agree, Gerardo, or not?
Yes, I agree. Although I would say that I think the church would wait for there to be, unless there's a confession, which obviously Tim Ballard is not going to confess,
Right.
denying all allegations. The
Yeah.
church would wait for a judicial due process to follow him, a conviction to happen before they would do something like an excommunication or discipline the member. When it comes to breaking the law, when it comes to allegations, if those allegations are not coming from, going to the bishop or stake president, which obviously they're not, or at least that's what Tim is telling us, that the bishop and stake president doesn't know anything. There's not really a process for the media relations manager or whatever to contact the bishop and stake president and say, hey, here are the Vice News reports. Can you go and investigate this? There's not a process like that. I do think there's a little bit of a naiveness, or he maybe, I don't know, when he says, I contacted my stake president and my bishop to see if they knew anything about this statement. I'm like, it was a little bit cringe, just because for someone that has penetrated, the high ranks of church headquarters, knows that that's not how it usually works. Like, bishops and stake presidents are not in communications with apostles or media relations of the church, and they wouldn't know what's really going on with a statement like this. So, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's roll the clip.
I've never had any business dealings with him. He's like a grandfather to me, and Leo can testify. He's a grandfather. He asked me to take him on this tour. President M. Russell Ballard asked me to take him on this tour. I didn't. It wasn't my idea. You were here, Coop. I was here. What? Tell me what you experienced.
Really quickly, that allegation that they did no business together is totally untrue, and we're going to address that in a bit.
By the way, if anybody wants to share this with any news outlet, do it. Share it. Something evil is going on. I don't know who's behind it yet. He loved the tour. Explain to this group my relationship with President Ballard.
He loved the concept of the American Covenant. He loved this tour. He encouraged you to do it. He thought it was something good, and I think they encourage church members to do good things of their own accord. And he encouraged you to do this. He thought it was
plain. Who set you apart? Who set you apart? Where did he do it? And what did he set you apart to do?
Be missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ.
President Ballard said he invited my son up to, this is the place. You realize you're participating in history right now? I want you to understand that. Three days before that horrible story launched, it was leaked to the press that I was going to run for U.S. Senate.
Okay, really quickly, I do find it a tiny bit sad as a dad that he's looping his son in on this. If I were him, I don't know, part of me feels like I would try to do everything I could to protect my kids from all of this stuff. Maybe that's just my bias, but that made me a little bit sad. But how many of us as Mormons have our kids? Was he called on a mission or ordained by Elder Ballard? What did he say, Gerardo? Did you hear
the son?
Yeah.
That he Tim asks him, who set you apart?
Yeah.
Was Ballard.
Not all of us get our kids set apart by apostles.
Right.
That's an extraordinary privilege that only elite Mormons would get.
Right.
But I'm a little bit sad that he is involving his son in this. But
again, I think at this point Tim is really not believing the media. Like, I think he's thinking that the Vice is lying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think it's a coincidence? 3 days later, Vice magazine.
And also, I don't know if he meant my leak. I will say that I did publish that little text message that I shared with you earlier about him being told by Jesus that he should announce his candidacy on October 10th because the end is nigh. I did share that publicly. I don't know if that's the leak he's referring to, but you know, if I'm guilty, I'm guilty.
Oh, John.
Vice? Do you think the church would make a statement to Vice? I can't imagine.
I mean, who has the last laugh
Vice
now?
magazine has done anti-Mormon stories that you can't believe. Vice magazine has promoted the concept that pedophiles should be called minor attracted persons to normalize it. Vice magazine has done more hit pieces on the church than maybe any other. I can't imagine that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would make a statement to a tabloid.
I mean, clearly they did. So he's wrong. I just want to say on behalf of, my relationship with Anna and Tim, for him to allege that like Vice is he's kind of inferring that Vice is pro child abuse or pro pedophilia. I think that's egregious and outrageous. I think a lot of the people that have criticized Tim and Operation Underground Railroad, as I mentioned previously, do it because they care about child sex trafficking. They do it because they care about child abuse. They do it because they want legitimate trafficking nonprofits to succeed. And they're concerned that Tim Ballard is giving these organizations a bad name, taking credit for things he shouldn't be taking credit for, committing fraud, and taking money and attention away from worthy organizations. But to allege that or to infer that Vice supports child abuse is outrageous and I think sad and untrue.
I can't imagine. I mean, I can't confirm it. But I can tell you this, that never, ever have I utilized my friendship with President M. Russell Ballard to raise money. I promise you that. This guy's with me. I can't go anywhere without him. I'm serious. My wife told me I can't go anywhere. Have I ever used the name of President M. Russell Ballard? No. To raise money? I keep it as quiet as I can. But the truth is, he was the one who revealed our relationship in a talk he gave here in Boston.
Really quickly, that was a little bit of an odd admission that his wife won't let him go anywhere without this guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it could be as a bodyguard or as a trusted consultant, but that almost implies that his wife doesn't trust him to be alone. That might be wrong, but I think it gives a little bit of that impression.
Yeah, especially with the article that just came out today on Vice News about the allegations of sex abuse. Sexual harassment.
And or I think it's going to talk about affairs, potential affairs too, alleged affairs. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, but also the guy's he's got to be on a payroll, right? I mean, if he's always with Tim Ballard, he's got to be on the payroll. Yeah. So like having him be a witness as someone on the payroll, can he disagree right now in that moment? Can he say, Tim Ballard, no, actually, I do remember you name dropping M. Russell Ballard multiple times. I think he's in an untenable position.
I do agree, but also, man, just the evidence of how big the involvement was of the apostle with Tim Ballard, O.U.R, and all of Tim Ballard's business ventures like this tour. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. It's undeniable. And I mean, I think he said it right there. It was him who would bring me up. And that's true. We're going to show it, how the apostle would bring Tim Ballard's name on talks and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make an executive decision. We're an hour and a half into this interview and we've got a lot to go. So I'm not going to keep playing the rest of that video. I think you get the picture. He was not only outraged, he didn't believe it. He was incredulous. I think his conspiracy mindedness kind of kicked in and he was kind of doubling down and just denying it. And there's a part where he says nothing you hear is true.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that was the most disturbing part of the whole thing, because there's kind of this idea in modern society where nobody can agree on what truth is. Nobody can agree on what reality is. And sometimes demagogues, just make these broad sweeping denials and generalizations. And of course, some of it's true. Of course, there's some veracity. So when he makes these broad sweeping generalizations that nothing's true, and he starts to question the reality, that's when we start getting into QAnon and conspiracy theory thinking and kind of truth denial that is disturbing to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead. The next part of this segment is we're going to see some apologists react. And the first one I wanted to share was a post that M. Russell Ballard himself made, kind of a curiously timed post. This was posted yesterday, and M. Russell Ballard posts, not like, hey, my heart goes out to the Tim Ballard and his family. Thanks to Tim Ballard for all the good things he did. Sorry that we flubbed the PR announcement. You really did thanks for all the money you earned for us at Deseret Book. Sorry I didn't tell your stake president and bishop. Sorry I hijacked you and caught you off guard. None of that. It was the Savior is more interested in our personal growth than our mistakes. Repentance helps us become true and faithful sons and daughters of God. We are only eventually made perfect only through Jesus Christ and his perfect atonement. Does that strike you as a little bit odd, Gerardo?
Yeah, especially a picture, right? A little bit odd.
Well, what is it about the picture that's odd for those who are listening?
I think the picture represents the adulterous women, at least.
And Jesus hugging them? Like, I really wonder if Tim Ballard felt hugged by M. Russell Ballard when the Vice News article came out, akin to Jesus hugging the adulterous caught in an affair. I don't mean to be too heavy-handed there, but I just that just seems really tone deaf and inappropriate for what he just did to his metaphorical grandson. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, there's also the possibility that all these posts are curated months or weeks in advance, and that it's not the apostle who's actually tweeting this stuff. I mean, there's a possibility of that too. But
yeah. Well, thanks for that, Gerardo. All right, the next reaction that I thought was really fascinating and was almost as shocking as the Tim Ballard announcement itself. Glenn Beck himself on the app formerly known as Twitter, now I believe it's known as X, he writes the following: things my church never used to do. And this was on the 17th. So this was yesterday. Things my church never used to do. 1, effectively excommunicate church members without giving them adequate notice of or an opportunity to respond to accusations. Now, really quickly, I think Glenn Beck is passionate about this because he co-founded at least 1 or 2 nonprofits with Tim Ballard. They fundraise together, as I understand it. They're friends, they're buddies together. So that, he's sticking up for his friend, but I think he also is aligned ideologically with a lot of what Tim Ballard does. So clearly Glenn Beck is upset and he's unloading on the Mormon church. The second point he writes, we're going to say something, Gerardo?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Second point, this is Glenn Beck unloading on the Mormon church. Second thing the Mormon church never used to do, effectively excommunicate church members by means of public statements issued to the news media by unnamed church spokespersons. I have a comment about that. I'll save it till after I read all of Glenn Beck's points. The third point is, and I would just say, Glenn Beck's kind of right there, that, as I mentioned before, historically, the Mormon church doesn't publicly smear its faithful members, even if they've done something wrong. So That's accurate, that concern. The third is Glenn Beck says the Mormon Church used to never effectively excommunicate church members through ambiguous but unquestionably damning statements casually provided to publications that hate the church, its members, and everything they stand for. Now, that depends, because the church has issued statements that it's shared in the Salt Lake Tribune. You could argue that the church hates the Salt Lake Tribune. I think the Salt Lake Tribune would not agree with that, and I wouldn't either. Maybe historically there's been a love-hate relationship with the Salt Lake Tribune, but certainly these ambiguous statements of immorality and of disloyalty is super uncharacteristic of the Mormon Church. Glenn Beck writes, a fourth thing the Mormon Church never used to do is effectively excommunicate church members from church headquarters with neither involvement or notice to local ecclesiastical leaders. Now, this one took a lot of people by surprise. Gerardo, do you have any idea or speculation as to what he meant by effectively excommunicate church members from church headquarters?
Well, he's saying, he's saying that church headquarters decided to excommunicate.
Oh, okay.
Headquarters. I mean, this idea that
I see.
A sick person were not contacted again. I mean, I'm with the church on this. Like, how would you go about it? Like, there's not really a sin that has been committed. Obviously, Tim Ballard is going to deny any allegations, so the bishop and sick person can't really do anything about it. If the church media public relations have a suspicion that any of these allegations are true, I mean, there's not really a means to go about it. Like, I'll give you an example. My husband's dad, my father-in-law, is a bishop at BYU Idaho. And just a few weeks ago, there was an allegation made by a girl at BYU Idaho from a different ward than his, that one of the members in my father-in-law's ward had raped her. And so there was this, it was this really hard kind of moment where, like, there was not really a process into like how are we supposed to go about this, because the allegation came from a girl in a different word, and the confession was not coming directly from the actual member of the word. So the only thing that the bishop could do was kind of like interview the guy and say, did you do this? And he's like, no, and then just go about it. Like, there's not really a process for it. So, and especially with these allegations, which maybe are somewhat ambiguous, there's not really a name attached to this. A lot of these allegations of sexual harassment because of obvious reasons of fear of retaliation. I mean, it's really hard. There's not really a process to go about it. I mean, this is the only way, in my view, that the church could have handled it, which is kind of just disassociate with Tim Ballard publicly, because there's not really a way to what is the bishop and stake person going to do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the real practical world, which the Mormon church leaders live in, this is probably the most expedient decision for the Mormon church. This is probably the best decision, in the best interest of the church. And the problem with that is you juxtapose it with like Jesus Christ's teachings about leaving the 99 to go after the one. The Mormon church would have its members believe that their health and safety is always going to come as a priority over the health and safety and security of the corporate organization. And clearly that's unrealistic and that's not true. But I think there's probably a lot of members that believe that the church would never do this to one of its own. And you can hear it in the people in the crowd. They're just like not believing it, right?
Yep. Because
the church, teaches that you leave the 99 to go after the one. And this just, you could make a really good case, Gerardo, that this is a fantastic corporate decision, but a horrendously unchristian decision.
Yeah.
Right? Unchristlike.
I agree.
Decision. Yeah. Okay. The fifth point that Glenn Beck writes that his church, Mormon church, never used to do is effectively excommunicate church members through church staff, not priesthood offices. So that was Glenn Beck's tirade as of yesterday. And immediately as I said that, first of all, I was shocked that a super prominent, internationally known loyalist, faithful defender of the Mormon Church, was jumping on the Tim Ballard bandwagon and criticizing Mormon Church leadership, although in kind of a veiled way. He didn't name anybody, but he certainly criticized the Mormon Church, which we covenant in the Mormon temples, by the way, never to do, to never speak ill of the Lord's anointed. Now, Mormons may interpret that covenant in different ways, but I read that as a criticism, as an overt, direct criticism of the Mormon Church. Do you think I'm overstating that, Gerardo?
No, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And so that's surprising, because you end up like me, John DeLynn, if you ever publicly, criticize the teachings or the behavior of the Mormon Church. So, Glenn Beck was really skating on thin ice for 12 minutes or however long he kept that tweet up. My response was the following: with respect, Glenn Beck, I'm not sure you know the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints very well. The Mormon Church uses you until you're no longer useful. Then they discard you. Happened to me. It's been that way since 1830. Oddly, I actually feel empathy for Tim Ballard. And anybody who's been paying attention to the way the Mormon Church over the past 10 or 15 years has excommunicated people almost like it was passing out candy, whether it's Sam Young, Natasha Helfer, myself, Jeremy Runnels, Leah and Cody Young, several legally same-sex married couples, Denver Snuffer, all the Snufferites that have been excommunicated. There's just so many. The only people the church seems unwilling to excommunicate literally are pedophiles and child abusers and rapists. Somehow they don't get excommunicated, but the truth tellers and the critics are excommunicated. And I'm on a rant now. I'll back off.
No, I agree.
Within a short amount of time, it was clear that Glenn Beck got cold feet, put his tail between his legs, deleted that tweet, and instead replaced it with this one. Glenn Beck wrote, "The Lord is aware of our needs and struggles. He and he alone will serve justice and restore all things to truth. This is his world, not ours. This is his way, and his way is not ours. Have faith." I have no idea what made Glenn Beck, turn around and run away, and delete his criticisms. It could be that someone in the know called him and said, "Hey, Glenn Beck, you don't know what Tim Ballard has done. Let me tell you about all the allegations against him." Or they could have just simply said, "Hey, Glenn Beck, do you want to face excommunication?" Or they could have pressed any of the financial or power levers that they have. But it's clear that even the great, mighty Glenn Beck, turned and ran when the heat was on from the Mormon Church leadership. Anything you want to add, Gerardo?
No, I mean, that's what happened.
That's what happened. I thought another common reaction in, let's just say, kind of the DesNat neoconservative, Twitter spaces in Mormonism was just denial. So here's a Twitter post by Jacob. What's his name? Jacob Hansen. Is that right?
Yep.
His response was, if this woman was a real journalist instead of a Godbeite hack. So basically, apparently Peggy Fletcher Stack of the Salt Lake Tribune, who is a faithful, committed, believing Mormon, by the way, she basically tweeted, check out Robert Gerke's column in the Salt Lake Tribune on the LDS Church's condemnation of Tim Ballard. And she just asked people what they thought. Jacob Hansen, sort of DesNat apologist, neoconservative Jacob Hansen, responds, if this woman was a real journalist instead of a Godbeite hack, that's an obscure historical reference to a critical Mormon group in the late 1900s in Salt Lake City, the Godbeites. Jacob Hansen continues, she would have an actual official LDS source for her claims. So who was it, religion gal? Who was the official from the church that put out this condemnation on behalf of the church? You should be ashamed. So Jacob Hansen is telling Peggy Fletcher Stack she should be ashamed. He's wagging his finger at Peggy Fletcher Stack. And I think the joke's on Jacob Hansen because Peggy Fletcher Stack had it right. This source has been identified. The statement has been validated, and there Jacob Hansen was invoking a conspiracy to question the validity of the statement instead of doing his homework and realizing that it was legitimate. Now, the next apologist that we want to mention was brought to me attention by my friend Anthony, but also by you, Gerardo. Do you want to tell us really quickly who this Russell Brunson is?
Yeah. So anyone that's tuned into marketing, web design, any of that would know who Russell Brunson is. So he spent the last 20 years, becoming probably a billionaire at this point by creating courses and creating the funnel model for websites. He created the ClickFunnels company, which has made millions and millions of dollars selling courses and teaching people how to make their websites, and especially e-commerce websites generate more sales. And he charges a lot for these courses, and has created like this almost like an MLM type company. It's a little bit interesting, just the model of the company, but he's really prominent. He's the face of his company, so a lot of people know him, know who he is. I mean, you'll probably see him if you follow anything about web design. You'll probably see his ads over and over again on your social media, and he's the face of the ads. He's the one that sells the courses, and of course, he's not the one that necessarily teaches personally, but because I mean, he's so rich, but anyway, he's very prominent, and he happens to be Mormon, and he came out with a statement in regards to Tim Ballard, because now it comes out that he has also been involved with Tim Ballard and the Apostle, all three of them together. And so let's listen to what he has to say.
Yeah, and if I could just add, like, if you I'll pull up the screen really quick. And if you go to YouTube and you Google like Russell Brunson, Operation Underground Railroad, you'll see that he has been a supporter of O.U.R. and of Tim Ballard for years. And in some of those sort of tech bro Silicon Slopes events, you'll see Russell Brunson on stage with Tim Ballard, and you'll hear them talking about their support for each other. And so Russell Brunson isn't just like an independent, objective observer here. He's clearly been a partner with Tim Ballard over the years. And so he probably feels invested and committed to everything Tim Ballard has done and is doing. And so I think that's important to mention.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and play the first clip of Russell Brunson defending Tim Ballard.
So the most recent article that came out was basically saying that the Mormon Church was against Tim Ballard and this whole huge thing, and it's this big scandal. And it's interesting because the way that I found out about Tim Ballard and the Operation Underground Railroad was actually from Elder Ballard. He personally called me and asked me to help Tim Ballard in Operation Underground Railroad. I have literally sat in the rooms with Elder Ballard and Tim Ballard as we discussed these things and these ideas. And so I want to start with, again, these are not my stories to tell, but just to let you know that the accusations that they're being made on the media are not true. As someone who was literally in the room when these conversations were happening. So that's number one. I wish I could go into a lot of detail, but they're not my stories.
So Gerardo, what did you think was interesting about that clip?
I mean, he's saying that the reason he found out about Tim Ballard is because the Apostle called him personally. You wonder, like, how does this Apostle have the numbers of all these billionaires and millionaires, Mormons? I don't know. That's interesting. But yeah, so the Apostle calls him, and that's how he finds out about Tim Ballard. The Apostle says you got to support Tim. I mean, kind of like in contrast to the statement that the church put out to Vice News and then Desert News. And again, this is probably before Desert News put up the article. So
right.
it's
So
just
maybe he was still incredulous that it was a credible statement from the Mormon Church.
yeah, I mean, imagine if you were them. Like, these guys are in the room with the apostles several times, planning how they're gonna, bring all these people to the church through Operation Underground Railroad, how they're gonna bring donors and millionaires to come fund the organization, and the apostle sitting right there. He's the one basically, bringing all the context to Tim. He's probably. I would be the same. Like, kind of like not believing the what Vice is saying.
Yeah. Really quickly, I'm going to share a comment that was made. Eric Sorensen writes, Russell is a good man. He is the real deal. Spent a lot of time with him, and he has a huge heart. I want to say, Eric, we're not trashing Russell Brunson. He seems like a really nice guy. I just think I think we're just trying to show some of the apologetic reactions in defense of him, but I'm sure Russell Brunson's a good guy. I do want to thank It's Fine for their super chat donation. These donations help pay for all our staff and resources. It's Fine writes exceptional coverage this month and always. Thanks for that super chat donation. Powerline Safety Guy writes mind blown. Thanks for this, John. Doug Vincent is a regular viewer and listener. He writes, love seeing you and Gerardo teaming up. The dynamic duo. You're Batman, I'm Robin. Is that okay, Gerardo?
That's okay. That's perfect.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and go to the next clip of Russell Brunson.
Like when I first got involved with O.U.R. and with Tim Ballard, I was warned by multiple people, including Tim and Elder Ballard, like, if you decide to go down this path, the gates of hell are going to begin open up, and like people will be attacking you. You'll be like they warned me for that, knowing that if I was going to go step and help in them with these things, that was going to happen to me personally. And if it's happening to me, and if I've been attacked because of it, imagine how much worse it is for Tim. Like when he finds somebody who's doing human trafficking, somebody who is a legitimately horrible human being, right? He finds this person, arrests them, or is about to arrest them, is building a case against them. He's got like the ability to stop somebody who's doing the most evil things on this planet, right? Now, what's that person going to do? They're not just going to lay over and like, oh, fine, take me, right? That person is going to come back and they have to attack the character of the person who's attacking them. Like if you look at like how to get uncanceled, like the whole playbook teaches you how to get uncanceled. It's like you have to attack the character of the person who's trying to cancel you. That's it. That's the playbook, okay? Come back to media manipulation 101. Like the way you attack somebody who's attacking you is you have to fight their character. So you come to that and you have the deepest, darkest, most evil people who are literally making tens of millions of dollars through human trafficking. Tim is finding these people, arresting them, getting them on trial, these kind of things. It's not that expensive for them to hire a good PR firm for 50 grand to go and build a campaign, to go and smear the character of the person. Like that's the reality of what's happening.
All right, Gerardo, what did you think was interesting about that?
I mean, just think about these guys, Russell and Tim, both of them believe that this guy is sitting in front of them, making the calls, calling them to come to these meetings and planning how they're going to save these children. This guy talks to Jesus every Thursday in the Salt Lake Temple. I mean, they see him as a not just a spiritual figure, but literally, a prophet like Moses. And when this guy is telling Russell, like, the apostle M. Russell Ballard is saying, Russell, if you decide to support us, the gates of hell are going to be open against you. Are you sure you want to do this? Like, imagine how serious this guy is taking this responsibility of supporting Tim Ballard. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah. I what I'd like to say in response, everything you said, but also I really don't like sort of this. This comes all the way from Joseph Smith, and there's probably a human element to this. But this idea that whenever you have adversity, it's the adversary, it's Lucifer, it's Satan and his minions coming after you to destroy you. That's okay if they believe that. But what that allows you to do is not take responsibility for any errors or mistakes, sincere errors or mistakes that you've made. And that feels like a shield, like a rhetorical shield that he and Tim Ballard are using to, because how could you ever criticize Tim Ballard or Operation Underground Railroad? it doesn't leave any room for legitimate criticism,
Right.
because it's all Satan and it's all evil fighting good. And that's exactly what they would say about Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith maybe, married 14-year-olds, married sister pairs, married multiple teenagers, married other men's wives, hid it from his own wife, lied about it. But we were all taught that those allegations were just, liars, anti-Mormon liars trying to besmirch God's chosen servant's reputation. And I just think I see why they do it. It's a gimmick. He probably believes it, but it fails to take any responsibility for any bad actions. And clearly Tim Ballard is guilty of at least some bad actions. He'll say that himself.
Yeah.
So
well, I just want to note, John, the implication of an apostle, a prophet, seer, and revelator jumping in this bandwagon of, any criticism against Tim Ballard or O.U.R. is the gates of heaven opening against them. And if you support this, Satan is going to be fighting you harder. Like, what does that tell you about, a prophet, seer, and revelator, someone that's supposed to be a spiritual leader for this worldwide church? And now with all this stuff that come out, and now, him through church PR saying like he doesn't even know this guy that well. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. This story to me, or a big part of the story is another apostle from the church, falling for well, first of all, lying, because by saying that he's not super related to him, or he doesn't really know him that well, he's kind of lying. And then also, what does that say about his spirit of discernment, or being able to tell if Tim Ballard is?
And we've got slides about that later. The other thing I just want to say is, as someone who has openly criticized the church for LGBTQ deaths, for hiding its history, for not providing its members with informed consent, for its problematic past, I think what Russell Brunson was just telegraphing is the way the church deals with its own critics, by smearing them, because I've certainly been on the receiving end of the smears of paid Mormon apologists. And so I think he was kind of tipping the Mormon church's hand in actually how the Mormon church treats its own prominent critics by hiring PR firms to attack their credibility and their reputation and their character. Anyway, I'm just that's a little bit of my stuff. Let's go to the third clip.
Other things, just be fully aware he is being attacked from the outside. This is not the truth. Okay, it is not the truth. Again, and this comes from someone who literally, I've been in the rooms with him and Elder Ballard talking about these things. Okay, I've been in the rooms. Elder Ballard was the one who introduced me. Tim never came to me and told me some big story about Elder Ballard and tried to get me in. It was the opposite way around. Okay, so fully you need to understand this is the way it's actually working. This is the actual truth, not some rogue employee who got fired because they were bad at their job, lying between the teeth. Like, it's what literally the sources are if you look at where they're getting the stuff. Like, it's
okay, Gerardo.
It's just the same, the apostle, and saying how close they are with the apostle. Personally, I don't doubt it. Some people are saying, how do you know that's true? It's coming from different people, it's not and prominent people. So I don't know.
And again, I don't know that never Mormons really understand this, but the term anti-Mormon is offensive to many of us who no longer believe in the church, or who criticize the church, who have left the church. You can love the Mormon people. You can even love the Mormon church and criticize it. In fact, you could argue that criticizing and holding the church accountable is a true act of love, because you care about it and you want it to be more healthy and you want it to do better and you want its members and its leaders to be healthy and happy. But what the church too often does is it uses this term anti-Mormon to smear and dismiss its legitimate critics. And I don't like it when that term is used, and most of the people who run in my circles don't like that term. It's just a way to invalidate and denigrate and dismiss. All right, the next I'm about to violate one of the cardinal rules of Mormon stories, which is to ever play a clip from the actors and entertainers formerly known as Midnight Mormons. There's basically three guys that run this YouTube channel: Cardin Ellis, Kwaku L, and Brad Lee Whitbeck. And before they did Midnight Mormons, at least Kwaku and Brad were involved in what were the Saints Unscripted? Is that what it was called? This YouTube channels that were pro Mormon Church, but eventually they broke off with Cardin and started this super critical, this YouTube channel dedicated to, like I just said, attacking critics of the church. We don't know how much they get paid for their efforts. We don't know to what extent wealthy Mormons and shady nonprofits are funding them. I don't like to share their stuff because they typically lie and misrepresent things. Just to give you a couple of examples, I once filed a police report on some violent material that they shared. I have a copy of the police report on my desk, and they claimed that I faked the police report, totally made up conspiracy theory kind of people. Another time, I publicized that my TikTok account had been canceled, which it had because I'd been reported by probably them and others. And then when I claimed that the TikTok account had been canceled, they claimed that I took it down intentionally, just to get sympathy.
The image,
and I have the screenshots of TikTok canceling my account. And they just tell a lot of lies, and they've smeared me with really horrible allegations. So generally, I don't ever share anything that they do, and I ignore them because I see them as, they're people too, but I just don't see their work as respectable or very credible. Although they are entertaining and they are smart, I'll give them that, and their following is starting to grow. So, having said that, I was taken back by how disturbed they were by the church's behavior. And so the next thing I want to do is play the reflections of three likely paid, they certainly accept Venmo donations from their supporters. So three apologists and admitted defenders of the Mormon Church. Let's sort of play some of their reactions to the church's attacks on Tim Ballard.
By the way, if anybody wants to share this with any news outlet, do it. Share it. Something evil is going on. I don't know who's behind it yet.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
He just said something evil is going on. I don't know who's behind it yet. That is, yeah,
Those are some tough
and by the way, I will always trust the man that says anything I've said with anybody, share it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm not seeing all these church office building people.
These cowards wouldn't even put their name on the statement initially. They gave it to Vice and didn't even leave a name.
That
Fox
does
13 have to say
tick me off.
I mean, that is the most cowardice thing ever. You're going to publicly condemn a man who's dedicated his life to the church and then not even leave a name as to who's doing it. We have to find out hours later on one article when they say, I guess it was sent by this church. I mean, I don't know Doug Anderson, but if the narrative that seems to be true about how this went to be happened, then Doug has been a total coward in this situation. 100%.
Yeah, and again,
yeah,
Doug,
I wonder how that guy's feeling right now. Like, what?
I want to extend grace to this man and say, look, maybe there's an explanation for this.
How Tim Ballard's kids feel with a bunch of the freaking school kids texting them being like, "LOL, the prophet hates you,
Doug,
Dad." You know,
Right.
Doug, reach out, my man. I reached out to the church. I talked to the PR people, and I was given the rigmarole of, you got to go to newsroom at churchofjesuschrist.org and all this other crap, even though I'm texting
which is the
people
stupidest thing to do because the newsroom didn't even have the gall to publish this. So we're supposed to go to the newsroom to get this information when they got to leak it to Vice.
And I'm only saying we have operated ethically within the channels that the church prescribes in order to get commentary on this very sensitive issue of, did you as a formal church and a large entity condemn an individual member without using the proper channels of the priesthood to denounce him. If you did, oh, amen to your priesthood. Amen to your priesthood. If you didn't, and if this is all just a misunderstanding, we suggest you talk and you clarify that. But right now we're not getting talk and we're not getting clarity, and it's making us think you either not in control of your own PR department. We all know how that goes. It's a big organization. It's a worldwide church. We can't be batting 1,000 as mortals, okay? But you got to come out and you got to say that, because if not, you're having some of the most enthusiastic defensors of you saying, did the church just denounce an individual without talking to his bishop, without talking to his stake president, without talking to X, Y, or Z? And if he did do it, what is it for? Well, they haven't said what it's for yet. Just this vagary of morally unacceptable behavior.
Yeah, I think when I look at the Fox 13 article where we got the info on Doug Anderson being the person behind this, they say, they quote Tim Ballard saying, "I can't believe the church did this. I truly don't. Can you imagine the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would publicly condemn one of its members?" And then they say, apparently the answer is yes, they would. The church's statement was sent by Doug Anderson from his official churchofjesuschrist.org email address. And so, again, this is a different news organization saying this is completely the church's statement, and then backs it up with just Doug Anderson sent it from his official
I have an old fairmormon.org email address. If I rant on how incompetent I think the PR division of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is, to some, I don't know, beat reporter for the LA Times, it doesn't mean that I'm officially commenting on behalf of all of Fair Mormon.
Yeah, it
Okay.
kind of does if you're the director of media relations for Fair Mormon.
Now we're starting to get in the nitty gritty.
If
Yeah.
you were the janitor on of Key Bank, it doesn't mean you're speaking for Deseret
Yeah.
First Credit Union. But this is the guy. I mean, the director of media relation for 15 years sent this to Vice, condemning Tim Ballard, calling him a betrayer, and saying he's doing things that are morally unacceptable.
And so look, if this is all the Mitt Romney camp putting pressure on a MAGA candidate and using the church and PR representatives as leverage, wildly unethical. If that's not true, and it's just, this Doug guy as a rogue operator, casting aspersions upon a fellow member simply because he's running for a political office and he didn't like that campaign or that person or whatever, wildly unethical. If it is a church who doesn't have handle of its own employees well enough that it can't keep them from doing this kind of thing, and it happens and they don't come out and say, no, we love our members, all of our members in good standing will be treated ethically, this is a rogue actor or else a rogue politician or a rogue whatever, wildly unethical. Like in all 15 scenarios we look at so far, the treatment of Tim Ballard, to me, has violated every...
Is Tim Ballard Sweeney Todd and he's making people into pies and we don't know it? He had to have done something horrific for them. Like, nah, this was so bad we didn't even bother with the stake president, bishop.
Yeah.
Straight to it. Like, the cops are on their way to arrest him right now. Like, that's the only way. So,
Yeah.
I mean, because this is effectively
I don't know.
excommunicating
This
somebody
is-
from the fold publicly.
This
That's
is
what
such
this
a
is.
stupid
Yeah.
thing to have done, because even when Mitt Romney was running for president, the church didn't officially endorse him. The church stays out of this kind of garbage. They don't get involved in this
Yes.
political stuff. So I just find myself over and over thinking, why would anyone
What was the
do
point?
this? Yeah, what was the point?
So I mean, I'm just gonna reiterate some of the words I heard those guys levy at the church: cowardly, wildly unethical, amen to your priesthood. So that's basically in apostasy, right? Incompetent, stupid. Those are some of the words that the church's apologists, some of their top, most prominent apologists, are using to attack the church. I wonder if the church is going to hire apologists to attack its apologists for criticizing the church. And the only other thing I was going to say is that I can't wait to see how their confirmation bias and their motivated reasoning kick in, because clearly right now they're unhinged and angry. But I'm sure just like Glenn Beck was whipped back into line, I'm sure they're hearing from their sources of authority and power, and I'm sure their tails will be returning to between their legs, and they will end up backtracking or kind of weaseling out of their courage that they currently feel. Gerardo, was there anything noteworthy that you saw in those comments?
He was walking through the different scenarios, the PR guy or the media relations guy being rogue, being like a fringe politician, undercover person.
Yeah, they totally start the episode by saying Mitt Romney made a phone call and that's what happened. It was Mitt Romney's fault.
Yeah. Yep.
Blame Mitt Romney.
But none of those scenarios include the apostle, being involved in this statement, which is like, how would the media relations guy would know about the relationship of Ballard and how it's soured, and how long has it been since they don't talk, and all those details about the relationship without him talking to the apostle, or at least giving some kind of approval of what he's going to say in his behalf. It's just kind of ridiculous that someone that has been 15 years in that position wouldn't vet that kind of a statement with an apostle. And I mean, to me, just the details about the relationship indicate that the apostle had to be involved in a statement like that.
Yeah, this is a $250 billion multi-mega corporate global entity. There's no way that some rando is going rogue and releasing his own personally written, unvetted by Curtin McConkie, press release. There's just no way.
Yeah.
Really quickly, Don says, smash that like button. We would love it. We love our audience. We've got almost 3,000 people in our live stream right now. We would love it if everybody would like this episode, would subscribe to the YouTube channel or to Facebook. That will help with the algorithms. And again, thanks for everyone who's offering the super chat donations to fund these episodes. These aren't cheap. These aren't free. And MPG says, thanks for covering the story. It's hard to follow. It's our pleasure. We love this work. All right. So I put together, well, I agree. I hope that Kwaku and Cardin and Bradley aren't hurt that I'm going to actually agree with them. I am going to agree with them. This is one instance where all of us are in agreement. The LDS Church has a serious public relations problem. And in this case, there are several major problems. The first is that they released this statement to Vice News. That's weird. Why didn't they release it to LDS Newsroom first? That's a problem. They didn't release any name. There was no name attributed to the statement. That is weird, and it is cowardly. Only after questions started popping up did they leak it to other networks. And you have to think that what they wanted to do, they're thinking, well, we need to respond to the Vice article, but we don't want our rank and file members to know we're condemning Tim Ballard, because so many of our rank and file members adore the guy and believe similarly to him. So how do we condemn Tim Ballard to the world, but not let any of our members know about it? I know, we'll leak it to Vice News. Over time, they realized that wasn't tenable because people were questioning whether the statement was even valid and starting to develop conspiracy theories. So then they start sharing with other news networks and eventually released the name. To this day, it's now September 18th at 5:32 p.m. The Mormon Church still has not released a formal statement on LDS Newsroom, as far as I know. And then, of course, LDS Newsroom violated its own policies by publicly slandering one of its most faithful and well-known public defenders. And Gerardo, you made a good point that I think other people are asking. We will be showing soon how the church started deleting any mention of Tim Ballard from its websites. Now there's indication that the church, some people are suggesting the church may be restoring those deleted articles about Tim Ballard, which I think, Gerardo, you suggested, and maybe RFM suggested this as well, that maybe that means they're eventually going to throw Doug Anderson under the bus and feed the theory that Doug Anderson was acting rogue instead of taking responsibility. Kind of like the John D. Lee Mountain Meadows Massacre scapegoating. Did you want to add anything to that, Gerardo?
Yeah, I mean that's what some people believe. I don't think so. I think the church will stay strong on their. I mean, at least not keep going with it, making more statements, but they will disassociate completely from Tim Ballard. That's what I believe.
But what about Doug Anderson?
I think Doug Anderson did what he was told to do, to be honest.
Yeah. And this is his LinkedIn profile. I don't like how the church sometimes has its loyal, devout followers and employees take the fall. And I like you, I'm worried that Doug Anderson was doing what he was told to do, and that he's going to take the fall for it and be blamed for acting rogue.
Yeah. I mean, again, I doubt that would happen. I think a condemnation like this had to be thought out by not just Doug Anderson, but by the top leaders. And by that, I mean probably including the apostle. So, yeah, I mean, that's a possibility, but I doubt it.
The Kwaku and Cardin and Bradley, they go on to call the Mormon Church on them to clarify, to apologize, to acknowledge that they handled this incorrectly, that they botched it, and to own up to it. But unfortunately, they should know better than anyone that Apostle Dallin H. Oaks is on the record of saying that the church does not apologize. And so I hope they're not holding their breath that the church will take any accountability. I do want to just give the church credit. In their statement, they did acknowledge that Tim Ballard and Russell Ballard had a super close friendship. And so in that sense, the church was honest in part of their press release statement.
Do you have the exact quote, John?
What's that?
Do you have the exact quote? Because that's not what I got from the statement. But
not the grandfather part.
No.
I can pull it back up again and read it to everyone. If you think that's necessary. Here is the statement. And it says, President Ballard and Tim Ballard established a friendship a number of years ago. That friendship was built on shared interests, blah, blah, blah.
I don't
know. So, friendship.
To me, that sounds like he didn't know him that well anyway, kind of statement, to be honest.
Okay, so for you, they're kind of underselling that a little bit.
That's what I got from the statement. When they're saying there's no business together, there's no this. It was only about the children of God and saving the kids,
right?
And I mean, yeah.
Well, let's show some photos of how close they are. There's Apostle M. Russell Ballard and Tim Ballard, I believe, outside, on Temple Square. I'm not totally sure, but I'm pretty sure that video was recorded outside of Temple Square. This is a post from Tim Ballard's Facebook page, I believe, where he's showing a photo of his daughter, who was taken on an ambulance ride and was put in the ICU. And there's a picture of M. Russell Ballard, Apostle, with Tim Ballard's daughter, probably giving her a special priesthood blessing, which is what Mormon priesthood leaders do. I don't know, Gerardo, did you ever were your illnesses or any of your family members' illnesses ever healed directly by a Mormon apostle?
No.
No,
that doesn't happen.
They don't do this for everybody. No. Only for their own family and for wealthy elite Mormons, frankly.
Yeah.
And special influencers. Anyway, that's another example of how close Ballard and Ballard were. There's a picture of Tim Ballard and M. Russell Ballard at, church headquarters in what I believe is the administration building with two other dudes. I have no idea who they are, but they certainly look like they're doing business. I wish I knew who those people were in the photo. If any of you know who the dudes are in that photo with Tim Ballard and M. Russell Ballard, I'd like to know. And then here finally is a photo with M. Russell Ballard, Tim Ballard, and the great Glenn Beck. And I promise you, they're not just hanging out as bros, having a meal together. I can almost guarantee you they're working on, if not nonprofit collaborations, for-profit collaborations, because we know that Tim Ballard and Glenn Beck's relationship was a business relationship. It absolutely was a business relationship. But by the way, we're going to show you that Tim Ballard was making at one point well over $600,000 a year. So nonprofit business is still business. You can still make a lot of money. You can still get very wealthy off of a nonprofit. So even if it wasn't for-profit things that they were talking about, even if it was nonprofit stuff, Tim Ballard was still making upwards of over $500,000 or $600,000 a year, not counting his book sales and his speaker fees, just from his salaries with the nonprofits. And again, that's not whatever he was making from his LLC. We don't know, but that just shows how these are some photos that show how connected they were. And the point that I wanted to make, that you made reference to this previously, Gerardo, this deals, in my view, another blow to the Mormon teaching.
Sorry,
what's that, Gerardo?
Before you do that, I mean, while you do that, I just want to ask the listeners, or we have a lot of people listening. We've read the statement. We showed you what the statement from the church said. I just want to ask from the listeners, from the statement, do you understand that the church, that the apostle had a close, really, really close grandfather-like relationship with Ballard, as these pictures are demonstrating? Or did you understand from the statement that they were kind of just friends for saving children and that was it? Like, what was your understanding of this statement? I just want to know what people think on the comments. But now you can keep going.
So comment if you believe the church's statement accurately represented the level of their relationship by calling it a friendship, or do you think they were much more heavily involved as friends, as almost family of choice, and as business partners? Post your comments, and maybe we'll share a comment or two from the listeners. And while they're doing that, I'm going to make my point, which is that this deal, if it's true that Tim Ballard betrayed M. Russell Ballard, that if he ends up being guilty of criminal behavior, if he ends up being guilty of affairs or of sexual harassment or whatever the allegations are, if those allegations end up being true, what this ends up doing is dealing another blow to the Mormon teaching that their prophets, seers, and revelators have what Mormons are taught is the gift of discernment. On the left, you'll see a photo with known forger and murderer Mark Hoffman with top Mormon apostles like Marion G. Romney, like Boyd K. Packer, like Gordon B. Hinckley, like Spencer W. Kimball, analyzing a forged document and paying murderer and forger Mark Hoffman money to be able to hide documents that the church felt were inconvenient. That was one example of where it's pretty clear these leaders don't have the gift of discernment like we're all taught. And then this photo of Glenn Beck, Tim Ballard, and M. Russell Ballard might deal another blow to that teaching. Now, having said that, Gerardo, are there any comments you want to highlight of people responding?
I think
to the accuracy.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly people are saying that the relationship was brushed over. That sounded like Elder Ballard was trying to make it seem like it was a distant relationship. That the church statement is a big "I don't know her," which means they were closer, but they were closer than the church is now comfortable with. And yeah, overwhelmingly people are understood from the statement that the relationship was not that close.
Yeah. Really quickly, again, I want to just make this point. It's outrageous that the church gave Mark Hoffman money, who ended up being a murderer and a forger. The church promoted Tim Ballard to high heaven. We're going to show that in just a second. And yet they excommunicated a true hero, Sam Young, who is a bishop, who just simply tried to fight for children. It's just outrageous. So I'm going to say it's a false claim. Okay, now we're going to address the next, I think probably the biggest lie of all in the church's PR statement is the claim that the LDS Church has never endorsed or supported Tim Ballard or Operation Underground Railroad or any projects associated with them. This has got to go down as one of the biggest lies ever told by the Mormon Church. And let me just show you a few examples. One, if you go to Deseret Book right now, today, if you go to Deseret Book and you type in Tim Ballard, you'll see book after book after book with 4.5-star reviews, 5-star reviews, where the Mormon Church has been hawking, selling, shilling for Tim Ballard and selling his books, and frankly making so much money off of Tim Ballard's books for years. When Tim Ballard gave his little press conference, his extemporaneous press conference, he noted how much money he had made for Deseret Book. So it's completely outrageous for the Mormon Church to claim that they never endorsed or supported Tim Ballard or any projects associated with him or Operation Underground Railroad. That's just egregiously deceitful and outrageous. Am I overstating that, Gerardo?
Oh, I mean, it's almost laughable. You literally just have to go to their bookstore, and you'll find out.
Yeah, but it's way worse than that. So if you go to, the Deseret News, these types of articles just immediately started popping up. I'll read the title of one. Tim Ballard, the Operation Underground Railroad founder and the author are one and the same. So that's in 2017. That's just one example of the types of articles. But I just did a 10-second search. I went to Deseret News, which, I don't have to tell most of you, is the official newspaper of Utah. It's owned and operated by the Mormon Church. It's literally owned and operated by the Mormon Church. I typed in Tim Ballard. I got 364 articles published by the Deseret News that mention Tim Ballard. And just so you don't think that these are like multiple references in just a few handful of articles, let me give you screenshots of some of these articles and read you the headlines. Tim Ballard considers run for Senate amid renewed controversy. What's that, Gerardo?
That's the bad one.
Okay, well, all right. One bad one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tim Ballard considers run for Senate. Watch new ESPN video spotlighting Tim Ballard's Operation Underground Railroad. The next one, movie review, gripping Operation Toussaint, shows Tim Ballard's real-life battle against sex trafficking. The next one, Abby Huntsman, exclusive Q&A, Tim Ballard's new book, New UVU President, Welcome Students. Next article, Tim Ballard, I fought sex trafficking at the border. This is why we need a wall. With a photo of Donald Trump, no less. Next article, Operation Underground Railroad's Tim Ballard meets with Ivanka Trump, politicians regarding human trafficking. Next article, Timothy Ballard, I already read that one. Next article, Tim Ballard talks O.U.R. partnership with the Pittsburgh Steelers in video on the 700 Club. Next article, Glenn Beck and Tim Ballard team up in Operation Underground Railroad video in Thailand. I wonder who it was that wanted to make sure the Deseret News covered Tim Ballard and Glenn Beck and their exploits. The next one, Tim Ballard's new book, Slave Stealers, ESPN feature, are part of a larger plan to tell O.U.R.'s story and rescue children. Next one, O.U.R.'s Tim Ballard partners with Glenn Beck's The Nazarene Fund to fight trafficking and slavery on a global scale. The next one, Sound of Freedom director Alejandro Monteverde will release Cabrini in 2024. That's just like 12 of the 364 articles the Deseret News published about Tim Ballard. I ask you, Gerardo, can you imagine, is there any chance that David Archuleta or Steve Young, can you think of any other celebrity that's going to show up with 364 articles in Deseret News? And listeners and viewers in Gerardo, I ask you, how does that jive with the claim that the LDS Church has never endorsed or supported Tim Ballard or any projects associated with him? Gerardo, I'll give you the floor.
I mean,
I'm
again,
ranting. This is
yeah,
caffeinated John. It's 6 p.m. and it's caffeinated John. Go ahead.
it's again, it's just laughable that they would make a statement like that. You know, you just have to go to Desert News, Desert Book. You'll find Tim Ballard all over the place. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
several
it's gonna
people,
get worse.
several.
It's gonna get worse. It's about to get worse, right?
Oh yeah, it's about to get worse. So let me share the next slide, which is like an example of the puff pieces they do. It basically, this is an article that's showing Tim Ballard. I think that's at the table with that same dude who was at his press conference. Does that look like the same guy?
Could be. I'm not sure.
And it's got photos of Tim Ballard taking people on tours in, New England and Plymouth, Massachusetts. And it even talks about on the end of this article, that Ballard is the founder of and CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, and it's got a link to his organization, and it's hawking his book. It says John Howland was a nobody, and it talks about John Howland's story and how it's covered in Tim Ballard's book, The Pilgrim Hypothesis. Like, can anybody argue that this isn't a clear and obvious endorsement? And shouldn't the Mormon Church be held accountable for this blatant, bold-faced, egregious, outrageous lie and misrepresentation that they've never supported Tim Ballard ever? Are you kidding me? But it gets worse. President M. Russell Ballard himself was a promoter of Tim Ballard. One example is a speech given just 4 years ago at BYU, Idaho, called The Lord's Hand, delivered on December 18th, 2019. And if you actually look at the speech, it says, this is President M. Russell Ballard talking. I had the opportunity this past summer to travel to Plymouth, Massachusetts with my friend Tim Ballard to learn more about what he had learned regarding Nephi's vision of these early pilgrims and how their history corroborates Nephi's vision. I walked over the sacred ground where the pilgrims had walked to discover the seemingly small and simple miracles that God had worked through them in order to achieve great things. Blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on to talk about who, Gerardo? Who are they talking about?
Tim Ballard.
John Howland. And if you remember, John Howland was the dude mentioned in the Pilgrim Hypothesis.
Yes.
So this is literally Mormon Apostle President M. Russell Ballard shilling for Tim Ballard's books in ecclesiastical responsibilities, speaking in his role as a Mormon apostle
at a university,
at a church-owned private religious university. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of crazy. Well, and there's more. I mean, we found other videos of Russell Ballard. Actually, I didn't put them on the presentation, but there's other videos of him giving talks in Boston and other places where he mentions Tim Ballard by name and the work he's doing. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy that they would claim that no support from the apostle or the church towards Tim Ballard has ever happened. But I think
there are a couple other articles. Here's another one: saving children, Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad.
Though, because these are at on the official church's website.
Yeah, church official website: Saving Children, Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad, Latter-day Saints channel. And this is just a few. This is just a small sampling. And then there's an Ensign article called "We Had to Seek God." And what's really outrageous about that one is that it recounts the Haiti, jump, where we now know that Tim Ballard relied on a Mormon psychic in Utah to tell him where this kidnapped child might be. And they spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of donor dollars to go to Haiti to try and rescue a kidnapped child based on the advice of a Mormon psychic.
Who was
and if you watch
with Nephi.
What's that?
Who was communicating with the prophet, Mormon prophet Nephi.
Yeah, which is very much like the type of stuff that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell did, and Julie Rowe and others. Tim Ballard is like swimming in this water. And if you watch the video, and I've seen the entire video of this Haitian intervention, it ends totally failed. They don't find the kid. And basically Tim Ballard endangers the lives of all the people that are on this jump with him. It caused several of his own team members, as I understand it, to quit because they never felt so scared as when they went on this Haitian attempt to rescue this kidnapped kid. But it's just outrageous that he's spending millions of dollars filming this failed intervention, all based on, some Mormon psychic getting a tip from Nephi of old. It's just outrageous. And that's an article that the Mormon Church's ensign. That's the story that the Mormon Church ensign is going to plug as faithful.
Wait,
and so
one more thing is that I believe the apostle had set apart Tim Ballard to go and rescue that kid and blessed him to find that kid for that specific jump that was not successful and that had the medium communicated with Nephi.
Yeah. Margie just reached out to me and told me to chill out. I told her I wouldn't be mean to Tim Ballard, and I feel like I'm upset at the church for lying, Margie and listeners. I hope people feel like I'm not being mean to Tim Ballard or even individuals. I'm just outraged that the Mormon Church would lie so outrageously. So anyway, Margie, you might be joining late, but I will calm down now. And viewers and listeners, thanks for your support. Okay. So the truth is that both the Mormon Church and Apostle M. Russell Ballard have massively supported and endorsed both Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad. And the other point that just started emerging just a day or two ago is that over the weekend, as soon as the church released the statement and it got out there, the Mormon Church started deleting any reference that it could find to Tim Ballard on its websites. So these articles started going down the memory hole. So these articles like Saving Children, Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad, or We Had to Seek God, you would go to search them and you would have it say page not found. And, on the one hand, I think that makes sense that they would be embarrassed and want to get rid of the evidence of their massive support for Tim Ballard, especially after they just told the world that they had never supported Tim Ballard or Operation Underground Railroad. So it makes sense that they would try and delete the evidence. But also, that's not honest. An honest person would say, hey, you know what? We did support this guy. We were fooled. We're wrong. We're sorry. We're taking these down, but we're letting you all know about it ahead of time so that it doesn't look like we're trying to destroy evidence and mislead people and cover up for our lies. And that's kind of what it appears like they did. Am I too mean?
Put a statement there too, right? Like leave the article, but put a statement there that the church doesn't not longer endorses under Operation Underground Railroad because of, whatever reasons, because Tim Ballard betrayed the confidence of the apostle or something like that. But of course, they decide to delete the evidence instead.
Yeah. Okay. So the next false claim that I have to call out, and this is more Tim Ballard's lie, but I think the press release is insinuating that there were no business dealings between Apostle M. Russell Ballard and Tim Ballard. Let me just replay this clip because it's just so outrageous.
Never in my life, never have I used his name to raise money, to make some business deal. What business deal? I don't have business.
Okay, so
Never happened.
So like that I think ties or comes in second for the most untrue thing that has been said. And now what I'd like to do is answer Tim Ballard's question, what business? Okay. So I want to refer everybody to a really important website called American Crime Journal. And there's an article here about what's called the whiteboard meeting. I think Lynn Packer was helpful in breaking the story, but then American Crime Journal kind of took the story and really ran with it. But I'm just going to read what it says.
Oh, and it has also been corroborated by Vice News as well. So
okay,
multiple other medias have reported on this whiteboard. Just so you know. But
okay, all right. So here's what it says: in August 2019, Tim Ballard summoned 10 or so of his most trusted Operation Underground Railroad associates to a clandestine meeting at home of O.U.R. rainmaker Paul Hutchinson, portrayed by Eduardo Versataghi in Sound of Freedom. Hutchinson was imperative to O.U.R.'s early success. Hutchinson was a multimillionaire and one of Tim Ballard's most loyal lieutenants. When he reflects back O.U.R.'s formative years with Ballard, Hutchinson speaks of Tim Ballard with glowing adoration. It's almost as if Ballard was more than a man in Hutchinson's eyes, but divine. It would be this meeting that Ballard became another man entirely to many of those in attendance. Also present was O.U.R. operations team leader David Lopez. Like Hutchinson, Lopez admired Tim Ballard, though a bit more grounded in reality. That would all erode before their very eyes this August night. This meeting was so secret that each individual was required to sign a non-disclosure agreement before anything would be discussed or questions answered. It was at this very meeting that Ballard laid out a secret plan to both monetize and proselytize his child sex slave rescue nonprofit, Operation Underground Railroad. So again, we're answering the question, what business? Tim Ballard asked the question, what business? We're going to show you. The next slide says, on the surface, the plan was to help grow the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, better known as the LDS or Mormon Church, financially and in membership. Underneath, Ballard's goal was not only to make himself millions of dollars, but to raise his profile and popularity among the Mormon elite. Not only would Ballard and his team be funneling donor money into his for-profit ventures, but to the LDS Church. They would also start converting employees, volunteers, and vulnerable children that O.U.R. is supposed to aid and rescue into the Mormon Church. Ballard believed that he would quickly gain the favor of church leadership and the Mormon elite, eventually securing a coveted lifetime appointment to the LDS Church's highest governing body, the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. So what is the whiteboard meeting? After each of these individuals signed Ballard's non-disclosure agreements, they assembled in the meeting room in Paul Hutchinson's luxurious home. On a whiteboard, also known as a dry erase board, Tim Ballard presented the overall strategy of what he called his master plan, each member's role, and how each of their respective organizations would funnel donor money into his for-profit business, Slave Stealers LLC. Tim Ballard believed that he could funnel and launder donor money through this nonprofit into his for-profit businesses, which he called Sizzle. Both the nonprofits and for-profits would then pay substantial tithes to the LDS Church, despite the fact that money from those funds had already been diverted to church coffers. Now, what did the whiteboard show? It showed multiple Tim Ballard controlled for-profit and nonprofit entities, several paths for donor money to flow directly from Tim Ballard's nonprofit entities into his main for-profit company, Slave Stealers LLC. It also showed how O.U.R. would bring more converts into the Mormon faith, how deeply involved M. Russell Ballard was, and how Operation Underground Railroad's takeover of an orphanage in Haiti is an apparent attempt to monetize adoptions. So here is the whiteboard that we're talking about. You can find it on AmericanCrimeJournal.com. And it's really hard to read, but I'm going to just describe it just vaguely, and then I'm going to show you a slide that's way more descriptive. But basically at the top of the whiteboard, it says TimothyBallard.com. And then under that, it says Slave Stealers. And it's got some names. We'll show you those names later. And then it says Take Sizzle on the Rescue. And then it shows a bunch of other nonprofits underneath. Operation Underground Railroad, the Nazarene Fund, that was his collaboration with Glenn Beck. There was other nonprofits. And then at the bottom, again, there's all this money being funneled into timothyballard.com. And it's got these number amounts, 2.5 million, $50,000 to $100,000 in speaker fees, all sorts, new books, all sorts of number amounts. And then it's got Paul Hutchinson's name on the left-hand side. And if we show a graphic illustration of what was on the whiteboard drawing, what you'll see is a certain name there under Slave Stealers LLC for profit, written by the hand of Tim Ballard himself. It says Brian Norton, Tim Ballard, and Gerardo Samano. What's the third name there? Written by Timothy Ballard under Slave Stealers LLC for profit.
So the actual whiteboard says M.R. Ballard, and in parentheses it says silent.
It says silent. So what that shows is an overt, explicit attempt to hide M. Russell Ballard's involvement in the for-profit LLC portion, not to mention all the funneling between the nonprofits and then between the nonprofits and the for-profits. And then finally, it talks about the Sound of Freedom movie on there. It talks about $50,000 to $100,000 in speaking fees, a $2.5 million bank account, and 3 to 5 new books coming out. So again, Tim Ballard asks, what business? What businesses? And this should be among the most egregious, statements made in this entire endeavor. Gerardo, do you want to add anything?
No. I mean, I think a lot of people could claim that most of these are nonprofits. Yeah, there's association of Tim Ballard with these nonprofits. I hope that we're going to be able to show, at least for the nonprofits, the records of tax records are public. So we're going to be able to show how much money Tim Ballard makes out of those. But for the ones that are LLCs and private companies, like the what's it called, John? The slave something company LLC.
Slave Stealers, right?
Slave Stealers company. So that one would not be public, but then we're going to be able to show some association with Ballard. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Okay. So just to kind of finish off the graphics here, the actual it lists a bunch of names of different people involved. I'm not going to necessarily name them and call them out. But what I will add is that the nonprofits that it lists that are controlled by Ballard are O.U.R, Nazarene Fund, Children Need Families, Liberty and Light Equity Trust, Mercury One, owned by Glenn Beck, and the Orphanage in Haiti. It goes on to say that Ballard's use of the word sizzle was taken to mean that the nonprofits would attract donors by way of dynamic humanitarian missions, such as rescuing child sex slaves. The money would end up in Ballard's own company, timothyballard.com and Slave Stealers, etc. It would make more money with Ballard's media engagements, Sound of Freedom, the movie, speaking fees, upcoming books, etc. And so that's it. And I just have to say, when you run a nonprofit, which I do, it's unethical to be, your salary is public information. And so, my salary is public information. I'm grateful for the salary that I make. But if I wanted to get paid more than I wanted the public to know, and so I set up a bunch of shell nonprofits so that then I could funnel money between the nonprofits so that then I could pay myself on the back end through other nonprofits to kind of obscure my total compensation, that to me seems like fraud. So if they were doing that, that would be a big problem. I hope they weren't doing that, but I think we're going to show evidence in a second that they may have been doing that. Really quickly, there's a tiny bit more evidence we wanted to show of Ballard's involvement. Do you want to set up this video clip, Gerardo, what this is?
Yeah, so we talked about the company Slave Stealers, which is an LLC, but then we're going to be able to show an association between the apostle and M. Russell Ballard and this company.
Okay.
is
All right.
Ballard.
Let's play the video.
In 2018, Ballard formed the Utah for-profit entity, Slave Stealers LLC. Then in 2020, the Florida company Stowaway Productions was organized to produce a multi-season film series based on Tim Ballard's book, Slave Stealers. It's about untold stories of America's centuries-long war with slavery. There's something curious about Slave Stealers' formation. The Articles of Incorporation show the company's principal office to be at 228 South, 200 West in Farmington. That's the office location of Russell Ballard's son-in-law, Brad Brower. He declined.
All right, Gerardo. So what did we just hear there? Can you summarize that for us?
Yeah. So at the end, he said he declined comments. So that means that he was contacted to comment on this association, and he didn't comment. But just so everyone knows too, this clip is from the video from our good friend Lynn Packer, who has been covering the story of Tim Ballard and O.U.R. For a long time now. And yeah, so we're gonna have a link in the comment in the description for this video so you can watch it in full. But
basically, it's saying that at least one of his nonprofits or for-profits was housed in M. Russell Ballard's son's property. Is that
yep?
Son-in-law.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So that's interesting. That's that seems like a silent partner, and I don't think the church's press release owned up to their business partnerships. That sounds a lot like a business partnership. What do you want to say about this next clip?
So this
is this the one about nutrients?
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and play it, then we'll explain it.
It all began when Russell Ballard asked Mark Jensen to come to his office at 47 East South Temple, the church's main administration building, to discuss a calling of sorts. Jensen made a note of it. Ballard asked Jensen to bring well-to-do LDS donors who were able to make minimum $50,000 donations to Ballard's office to finalize the transactions. The money would be used to enhance LDS church properties near the Kirtland, Ohio temple, to rebuild key landmarks, build a new visitor center, and improving infrastructure, such as roads. The landmarks are near the Kirtland Temple, owned by the Community of Christ Church. Faithful Mormons believe Jesus Christ appeared there, as well as Moses and the prophets Elijah and Elias. At its 1836 dedication, many in the congregation had visions, saw angels, and spoke in tongues. Russell Ballard would refer to it as a great Pentecostal outpouring. So, what happened when Jensen and prospective donors met in Ballard's office? Jensen claims that during the meetings, Elder Ballard would suggest that donors also consider investing with his son Craig Ballard and son-in-law Brad Brower. Subsequent meetings were set up at their offices in Farmington next to a facility where powders and drinks, that is, nutritional supplements, are formulated for various multi-level marketing ventures. As an example, one of several Kirtland donors, who Jensen says invested in the Ballard family enterprise, was Mormon billionaire Gene Yamagata, handled by Yamagata's CFO, David Sr. Jensen claims Ballard fired him from his calling after Jensen and at least one of the Kirtland donors expressed concern about the propriety of linking church donations to investments with Ballard's family. But Jensen says after his termination, he was re-engaged, but under the direction of two other apostles, Henry Eyring and Jeffrey Holland. Jensen says the fundraising continued. I asked LDS Church Media Relations.
Okay, I think Gerardo, are you waving at me to stop it? Okay, you're muted, Gerardo. Okay, so the one thing, that just gives you so first of all, again, a shout out to Lynn Packer and O.U.R. Lynn Packer and his YouTube channel for his amazing journalism. That gives you a flavor of kind of the business deals that Ballard is orchestrating. And to be honest, for decades, I've heard about people make allegations of M. Russell Ballard being involved in shady business deals. so it kind of shows behind the scenes how that works, how there's nepotism involved. And then the final thing is, if you remember, they talked about powders and supplements and that sort of thing. And some of you will remember this video that Tim Ballard put out right on the heels of his Sound of Freedom movie.
Guys, I want to tell you about a new line of supplements that I'm putting out called Freedom Products. You can go to freedom.store to learn about the 50 plus products that we have. So it's really cool how we created this with a friend of mine, one of the undercover operators that I've worked with for years and years and years. So as you know, we operate in some very crazy areas. You don't always have access to fresh food. It can be very unhealthy. So for years, this operator's been very kind of scientific and been putting together different formulas of different supplements, things for energy, things for health, things for gut health, things to boost testosterone, of course, protein. I said, if you make a protein, make sure I want like 6 or less ingredients. That's how I know it's clean. After about 6 or 7 years, finally, this line is ready to go right now, and we're pushing it out. It's called Freedom. I want you to learn more about it. I like to actually mix both of these up with the protein powder. It's really good. It's all so incredibly clean and healthy, as are all the products. I mean, this stuff has everything you need. So go to freedom.store, learn more, and get your products. And the good news is a portion of the proceeds from all purchases will go to fight human trafficking.
And of course, it doesn't say how much of the proceeds are going to go to human trafficking. And the truth is, I don't know, Gerardo, whether Ballard's sons were investors and if there's a direct tie, but you did hear Lynn Packer talk about the mention of powders and supplements. And so I think that's worth investigating, whether or not those powders and supplements are in any way backed financially by M. Russell Ballard's family.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add about that, Gerardo?
Nope.
Okay. So this claim, just to kind of like this claim that M. Russell Ballard never authorized Tim Ballard to use his name. I mean, the bigger deal, the bigger news story is that M. Russell Ballard used Tim Ballard's name all the time. And clearly, if Tim Ballard and M. Russell Ballard were meeting donors and wealthy people all the time behind the scenes, and clearly if Deseret News and Ballard himself were mentioning Tim Ballard's name and nonprofits and books constantly over a 5 to 10 year period, clearly Ballard was cool with M. Russell Ballard was cool with Tim Ballard using his name. So that's just I think we've made that point. A final slide from this website talks about Ballard's millions. It says Tim Ballard's nonprofit operation, Underground Railroad, has millions of dollars in liquidity. Legitimate nonprofit entities typically have 2 to 3 years of annual expenses in reserve. O.U.R. on average had 10 to 20 years of operating expenses in reserve. It's just one of many reasons why Charity Watch downgraded their rating to a question mark and issued multiple cautions about the nonprofit. In reality, Ballard could not simply write checks to himself without risking his tax-exempt status. According to O.U.R.'s Form 990 in 2018, Ballard's salary at O.U.R. was over $300,000. In 2021, it was over $500,000. What was Ballard's solution? According to 2 O.U.R. executives in attendance, surround O.U.R. with other nonprofits and for-profits, creating a complex labyrinth of entities where the money would eventually flow into his personal bank account. Ballard pointed out an added bonus. He told those in attendance at the clandestine event that same sizzle that generates profits could bring masses of people into the Mormon church. It was his capitalism begets church converts plan. Ballard was perpetuating that this was some divine plan, as if God wanted millions of dollars of donor money to flow through a labyrinth of entities directly into Ballard's pockets. And I just wonder, whether all those people who donated to Operation Underground Railroad to rescue and save children were planning on so much of that money being funneled into Tim Ballard's unrelated nonprofits and even his for-profits, and eventually so much of that money, ending up in Tim Ballard's pocket. And I will say, I have 6-figure compensation at the Open Stories Foundation. I am transparent about that. You can go read my 990. What I don't do is find ways to funnel money to me in other ways. I try to watch that. I try and be ethical about that. And I try and make sure that my board sets my compensation in an ethical way. And I'm sure I'm not perfect, but I've tried, and so I'll just own if I've made mistakes. I want to own them because I'm not perfect. Gerardo, you were kind enough to put together the financial statements from O.U.R. in past years. Do you want to quickly tell us kind of the highlights from each of these slides?
Yeah. So for 2018, we can see that the net assets were $16 million. And then we have Tim Ballard making $343,000 in salary, just of Operation Underground Railroad. And then we can just go pretty quickly on this, unless you have something to point out,
Nope.
John.
Nope.
Okay, perfect. So the next year, is this 2019?
2019.
Okay, yeah. So we have in revenue $22 million and net assets and $30 million. I mean, at this point, they're only having expenses of $9 million, but a net income of $12 million. And this year, Tim Ballard made, for some reason, his salary went from $300,000 to $100,000 that year.
That's weird. Yeah.
Then the next year, on 2020, we have him going into the $0, so he didn't make any money. I think a way to explain it, I know that he was not he left O.U.R. for a time, so it could be that it was that previous year where he left early, and he was out of Operation Underground Railroad for a year and a half, or a little bit over a year, and that's why the compensation shows for $0, but it still shows him as a founder.
Right.
And that's for the year 2020. And then the 2021 report, we're at net assets of $80 million. And then Tim Ballard's compensation goes up again to $335,000. And then that's 2021. Do you have one more?
Yeah, this is the big one. This is the big one where you brought evidence of him making an additional $100,000 through a different nonprofit, the Nazarene Fund. So he's now making $335,000 through O.U.R. and then on the side funneling money into a different fund, possibly to get extra income. So $335,000 plus $100,000 is $435,000. On just in 2021 alone.
Right.
And then we go to 2022.
Yeah, and inexplicably his salary in Operation Underground Railroad goes up by almost double to $546,000 plus $20,000 of a bonus. So
yeah. And we don't know how much he made from his LLCs, from his private from his other nonprofits, from his LLCs, and any other stuff that isn't shown. So
he make a lot of money with his books, right? Like on that statement he made in Boston, he says his books have made a lot of money, right?
Yeah. So and I'll just say one last time, it's true that I make a 6-figure salary. What's also true is that I was making a 6-figure salary in 2004 when I worked for Microsoft. And so I pursued a PhD, 2 master's degrees. I've been working on Mormon stories for 18 years, and we've had multiple independent entities do salary analysis to make sure that my education levels, my experience, my performance, and other nonprofit CEOs and talents doing comparable things to make sure that my compensation is meets market value. Maybe Tim is worth $500,000 or $600,000. If he is, there's no problem. I'm not necessarily attacking Tim Ballard for the size of his salary. I really do think that nonprofit executives and employees should be paid generously, should be paid handsomely, because they do hard work, they do important work, and they should be rewarded for their efforts. So my point is not to shame Tim Ballard for his compensation, but it is to say, if he was creating nonprofits to funnel money through and to provide himself additional income that isn't transparent, that's a problem. And so, just do it ethically. And I'm not even alleging that he did anything unethical. But there's concern, and I think that might be part of why there were federal criminal investigations, but we'll have to see. I did have planned to touch briefly on the sexual allegations against Tim Ballard. I'm gonna pass on that tonight. Other than to say tomorrow, I believe now it's at I believe it's at 2:00 Eastern time, noon Utah time. I'm going to have Anna Merlin and Tim Marchman from Vice on Mormon Stories. Believe it or not, we're not just going to talk about the sexual allegation story that broke today. There's a new breaking story that they say is even more earth-shattering than the ones that have been shared so far, that's going to break tomorrow. So if you think you've heard intense things, we're going to cover the sexual allegations and even a more shocking reveal tomorrow on Mormon Stories. The final thing that I'll say is I saw a tweet that Anna Merlin, the journalist, wrote, and she wrote, "I truly cannot believe I'm tweeting this, but apparently a rumor in the LDS community is that I am a Wiccan priestess and thus not trustworthy to speak to. I am Jewish. I have always been Jewish and will be for the rest of my life and whatever comes after. And also what? I just have tattoos. My mom hates them. Trust me on this." So, I mean, she's being lighthearted. She's being a good spirit, a good sport. But clearly the attack dogs are out. And it's just kind of sad to see how vicious and dismissive faithful supporters of the Mormon Church are against Anna and Tim and Vice News. The final things that I'm going to add are just some final questions that I have that I just want to read off as I end today's episode. And Gerard, I'll get you in for any final comments you have. But I want to know why the federal investigation into Tim Ballard was shut down. Why was the FBI involved? Why was it a national investigation? And then why was it just mysteriously shut down? Or is it, as Fox 13 News seemed to infer, is that still an ongoing investigation? Has a grand jury been convened? And is one of the reasons why the Mormon Church and Mormon politicians appear to be running from cover from Tim Ballard because an indictment or multiple indictments are soon to be handed down? That's one question I have. A second question I have is, was Sean Reyes involved in scuttling that investigation? I ask that because just recently I noticed a tweet from Sean Reyes where he said, "Acquittal on all counts. Texas Senate makes the right decision, and America gets back a battleship in its fight for liberty, prosperity, and safety. Congratulations to our brother and colleague, Ken Paxton, and his family." As I understand it, Ken Paxton is the Attorney General. He's the Sean Reyes of Texas. And recently, he was under investigation by his own party for allegations of stopping a federal investigation as Attorney General of the state of Texas. And if Ken Paxton is stopping a federal investigation, possibly unethically, is that a possible reason why Sean Reyes is so congratulatory of Ken Paxton of being exonerated I'm curious to know if Sean Reyes had any involvement in stopping the federal investigation of Tim Ballard. If he did, that would be a gross and egregious conflict of interest, knowing that he, had so many joint so much joint involvement with Tim Ballard. Now that's just questions. I have no evidence. I'm not even making allegations, but I would love to know the answer to that. If anybody ends up knowing. A couple other questions I'm just going to leave out there. Why weren't Tim Ballard's bishop and stake president notified that he was being thrown under the bus by the church leadership? Has Tim Ballard been excommunicated? There's a lot of speculation as to whether he was excommunicated without his involvement or consent. I think Glenn Beck's usage of the term excommunication has fueled some of that speculation. As far as I know of no indication that he has yet been excommunicated, but I'm curious about that. Will the Mormon Church sort of own up and release this official statement on LDS Newsroom, or will they allow speculation to fester in sort of neo-fundamentalist, conservative, Orthodox Mormon spheres, allow them to continue believing that a rogue PR person issued that statement instead of it being issued by M. Russell Ballard and the Correlation Department and Kurt McConkie themselves? I think ethically the Mormon Church needs to step up and release that statement through LDS Newsroom, and also issue apologies or clarifications to help people know what's really going on and to apologize if necessary. I'm curious to know if Sean Reyes is going to turn on Tim Ballard. They've been allies up until this point, close buddies, partners. Will Sean Reyes turn on Tim Ballard? Will Tim Ballard back down, or will he double down and even possibly lead an opposition movement to the Mormon Church? That probably sounds crazy, but it is not outside the realm of possibility that just like the Capitol was stormed in rebellion, I think it's within the realm of possibility that Tim Ballard and his followers could metaphorically, symbolically lead a spiritual and a religious rebellion against the Orthodox Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm curious to know if Tim Ballard is still going to announce that he's running for Senate, if he's going to obey Jesus and announce, as it's been alleged, his U.S. Senate candidacy on October 10th, or did Jesus change his mind, or will Tim Ballard disobey Jesus? I'm curious about that. I'm curious to know what other allegations and charges are in the works, and I'm curious to know, as we've already discussed, whether the church's head spokesperson, Doug Anderson, will eventually be thrown under the bus. Those are questions I have. Gerardo Sumano, you've done a great job in helping co-produce today's episode. Unmute yourself and tell us if you have any final words.
I'm excited about what's coming up tomorrow. I think people should consider these allegations seriously and just follow the evidence, And I think I hope that the church. I mean, there's a question, of whether church members are gonna side either with the church or Tim Ballard, because Tim Ballard is not gonna back down from his position that his relationship with the apostle was close and very, very close. So who are members gonna side? Are they gonna side with the church who's denying that, or are they gonna side with Tim Ballard? And that would be interesting, and we'll see it in the days to come. Probably months, and will it create a schism in the church? We don't know, but yeah.
The last point that I want to make, and I'm going to make this for journalists, Gerardo, we're stepping on each other with the screens. It's okay. I want to make this point for Never Mormons and for journalists who just really want to understand the Mormon angle. In some sense, this entire Tim Ballard issue represents a sort of chickens coming home to roost sort of situation. The Mormon Church has been hyper vigilant on its progressive or liberal wing, excommunicating legally same-sex married couples, excommunicating people who support same-sex marriage, like me, excommunicating people who ask the church to be honest in its history, or who criticize church leadership for racism or sexism or homophobia, excommunicating its feminists who advocate for female ordination, excommunicating Sam Young for his advocacy for LDS children and to fight child sex abuse, excommunicating Natasha Helfer for advocating for ethical mental health treatment in the Mormon Church. The church has been hyper vigilant at excommunicating its critics on the left and its more progressive and liberal members. And that's its right. What it hasn't been vigilant about is excommunicating its neo-fundamentalist and neo-conservative members. It did excommunicate Denver Snuffer and Julie Rowe and a few smattering of the Snufferites. But there's a whole swath of tens or hundreds of thousands of neoconservative Orthodox Mormons that have super fringe beliefs, and they've been allowed to fester, to obsess about the second coming, to obsess about prepperism, to teach each other that you can use prayer and psychics to speak with Moroni, to speak with Nephi, to speak with Jesus. This whole multiple mortal probations and reincarnations and knowing each other in past lives. This whole stuff that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell got into, along with Julie Rowe and all those preppers. Those beliefs have not been condemned. They have not been tamped down. The prepper movement has not been condemned by the Mormon Church, along with a lot of these teachings. And so Tim Ballard, with his millennialism, with his claiming to speak to Jesus just like Denver Snuffer, with his using psychics to speak to Nephi, to tell them where to rescue a kidnapped kid in Haiti, you know, the Mormon Church is not tamping down on these heretical, dangerous, sort of apocalyptic teachings. And the chickens are coming home to roost, whether it's with Jody Hildebrandt, who, by the way, you know, Tim Ballard and O.U.R. supported Jody Hildebrandt, you know, the reckless and unethical and torturous therapist that's associated with the 8 passengers. Like Jody Hildebrandt and connections ran in the very same crowds as Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Tim Ballard and his folks at Operation Underground Railroad. It's all the same group of people. And so I'm just going to end by saying the Mormon Church is accountable and responsible for failing to crack down on and hold accountable the neo-fundamentalist conservative prepper right wing of its membership, unlike the level of vigilance and severity that it's enacted on its progressive wing. And it needs to change because people are dying. People are literally dying. Families are being wrecked. And frankly, Mormon Church, your PR has become a disaster in the past several weeks and months with all of these neo-fundamentalist Mormons emerging as empowered embarrassments to the church's public relations image. So Mormon Church, for your own sake, tamp down on neo-fundamentalism, prepperism, millennialism, and all of this dangerous, weird psychic spirituality that is plaguing you and frankly tearing your church apart. It'll be hard. It'll be difficult. I understand why you don't want to do it, but if you don't, you fail to do so at your own peril.
Sorry, John. I have one more thing to say. I totally agree with you. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it. Go for it.
I just had this realization. You know, I think a lot of people like Cardin Ellis and Kwaku and even you have posed the question of why were the bishop and the stake president not informed about this statement or, you know, this problematic behavior by Tim Ballard. I mean, what are the odds that Tim Ballard has received the second anointing? and I would say pretty high, especially being that close to the apostle as we've shown. And I'll say my dad, who's a bishop in Mexico, he has been in stake precedence for a long time, for a very, very long time, and now he's a bishop. But anyway, he told me this story of one time there was this allegation made against this member, a prominent member, who was in his word, and sexual allegations, and they needed to be addressed, obviously, through the priesthood. And he was told by I believe a 70 that he was not to interview or do anything with that member, and the hint was that that member had received the second anointing, and he was not to be disciplined or even interview about it. So I mean, I just wanted to maybe bring that up because I just thought about that Tim Ballard has probably received the second anointing. If you don't know what that is, that's like a super secret ceremony that most Mormons, most members of the church don't even know about, where prominent Mormon members, elite members of the church are invited to a specific temple where there's a ceremony that happens where an apostle basically tells them that they are going to become gods in the next life, and that no matter what sin they do, they're still going to be saved in the afterlife, except for murdering or spilling innocent blood or something like that. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about the second anointing, go to Mormon Stories podcast, the Tom Phillips episode or series of episodes. It's definitely one of the most important episodes I've ever released. And it's a disturbing thing. Of course, we're speculating as to whether or not Tim Ballard received the second anointing. And, a reaction to that would be, how in the world could they be punishing him so publicly if he's received a second anointing? But, we're speculating, but it's at least a worthy question. And Gerardo, it's a great excuse to teach people about a really important concept. Really quickly, please, we are a nonprofit. We do rely on your donations. We are transparent in our finances. We have no shady additional 501c3s that we channel money to. We report my salary ethically. I believe my salary is ethically pegged by an independent compensation board. And frankly, when I ask for donations, it's not for me. The residual donations right now more than cover my annual salary. And I don't even think I've taken a raise in many years, other than just a performance bonus that I get each year that the board independently awards to me. But the reason why I'm saying all this is because we really do rely on your support to pay Gerardo, to pay Maven, to pay Julia, to pay Brooklyn, and all the people that help make Mormon Stories possible. So if you value this content, if you want to see it continue, please go to mormonstories.org, become a monthly donor. And, we have probably 10 to 20 donors drop off every month for financial hardship. They move on, they lose interest, whatever the reasons are. They believe smears that are told against us, whatever it is. And so we always need new donors to replace the ones that have stopped donating, or we have to cut services. So please, if you are valuing this content, please become a monthly donor at mormonstories.org. Click on the donate button. Also, please like this episode. Please subscribe on YouTube. We've loved our viewing audience, both on Facebook and on YouTube. Also, our listening audience, we love you too. You can follow us on TikTok. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook, and even occasionally I tweet. But mostly just thanks to all the donors that make this possible. Thanks to our amazing commenters that come on and comment on the live stream. I wish I had time to read all of the chats and comments. Thanks to Maven for helping moderate the chats today. Thanks to Julia for helping with the time codes and show notes. Brooklyn for the editing. Thanks to you, Gerardo. And the final thing is tomorrow, please do check out the episode that we have planned. We will have back on Mormon Stories Tim Marchmont and Anna Merlin of Vice. They're going to be coming on to talk about not just the new allegations of sexual harassment, but the article that they published and some breaking news that I'm not going to be releasing here, but they say is an earth-shattering article yet to come about Tim Ballard and O.U.R. I can't imagine what else it is. Anyway, love you guys. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Thanks for all your support. And we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care, everybody.